Good evening, everybody. It is April 15th, 2021 at 6:02 p.m. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. I am Mike Capuano, the chair of the planning board. With me tonight is Amelia Aboff, Sam Denning, Jahan Habib, and Rob Buchanan. We have a full contingent of the planning board tonight. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general laws, chapter 38, section 18, and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the planning board will be conducted via remote participation. We will have an audio recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. We have a number of items on the agenda this evening. We have three public hearings that have previously been opened that we'll be speaking about this evening. One is 120 to 132 Middlesex Avenue. One is 71 to 72 Union Square. One is 3 Hawkins Street. And we have 2 new hearings that will be opened and heard this evening, 255 Elm Street and 240 Elm Street. So I'd like to ask the clerk of the planning board to read into the record the notice of public hearing on those 2 applications for Elm Street.
So those 2 are CZC 20-000085, 255 Elm Street. The Harvest Club proposes to establish a cannabis retail sales use in the commercial core district, which requires a special permit. And CZC 20-000073, 240 Elm Street. Sierra Naturals Inc. proposes to establish a cannabis retail sales use in the Mid-Rise 4 district, which requires a special permit.
Great, thank you very much, Sam. It is the discretion of the chair to take some of these items out of order. We're going to start with 71 to 72 Union Square. It's my understanding that the applicant's counsel has an update for us regarding a covenant that they may have, and we have also received new renderings from that applicant pursuant to the request of the board to see it from some additional angles. So if I could please have the applicant and or the applicant's attorney unmuted, I'd like to be able to have a conversation.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I am working to do so. It would help if the applicant's team could raise their hand using the raise hand feature so that I can find you in the list. There you are.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Excellent. Adam Dash, 48 Grove Street in Somerville, representing Lakshmi N. Pradhan, trustee of Everest Realty Trust, the applicant and owner for 71 to 72 Union Square. I appreciate the consideration of taking us out of order, Mr. Chair, and we were before you on April 1st. You may recall since then, the board had asked us to provide a rendering of the property from the old police station side from that angle, which we did submit late last week, and I believe you should have that as you stated. We also have executed and delivered to the city Green Line Extension development covenant for the Green Line Extension payment that is part of this, this project will be paying for. So that has been delivered both email and hard copy yesterday to the city. So that's in hand. So those are the 2 things that have happened last time. As you know, this, I think I said last time, this project has been ongoing and filed back in March of 2020. So we've been about 13 months into the process, and we would really love to wrap it up if we could tonight. So if the board would like to do that, we'd really appreciate it because we've been through so much design review. There's been outpouring of public support and council support. And And we'd really think this would be an amenity to the square. But we're here with the team, Mr. Binosh Pradhan from the applicant group, Will Chalfant, the architect, Steve Siragusa from DCI, the traffic engineer. So we're all here, and then the folks from Union Leaf, who are the actual tenant cannabis retail store. If there are any questions that the board has, I know we went through this a lot last time, though.
Thanks very much, Adam. I know one of the questions and points of discussion that the board had with you and your team last time we met was the height of the first story windows and canopy as it related to adjacent buildings. One is the police station, one was the independent restaurant, and there was concern raised that it didn't match the independent. So folks in the audience know what we talked about last time and why we wanted a visual from the other perspective. And the justification was on a number of different reasons, one of which was even though it didn't match necessarily the height of the first story and the lining up of the independent, it did to the building to its left. So that's what we wanted to see a little bit more clearly, and you have sent that around. I don't know if the audience has seen it, but I think it would be beneficial if someone on your team could share that image, maybe from both sides. If you've got, I don't know if you have a full slide deck or what, but just so people can see what it is that we were talking about. So.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. I mean, Will Chalfant, if he could be made to have the, well, there you go. Looks like somebody's doing something here. Okay, that is the perspective from the independent side from the right that you had seen in the original packet. And then that is the one that we submitted since then, which shows it from the old police station on the left side, which shows the lineup. As you can see, it's almost impossible to match both buildings at the same time because they don't line up with each other. But we went through the design process. We had earlier iterations of our project, which more went with the independent scale, and the Urban Design Commission, and had changes, and we provided the 3 different perspectives we're required to provide, and this was the one that came out after several Urban Design Commission meetings, and we think it's a better design at the end of the day. And when you see it from this perspective, I get it, that it does, this is a more substantial, the more taller building than the independent, which sort of stands off on its own, and perhaps matching with the old police station is probably the better call. But when you look at it from this perspective, it makes eminent sense. So, but that's how it came out to be this way. If you obviously, others in the team more skilled at this sort of thing than I can opine if you had any questions.
Thank you very much, Adam. What I'm actually trying to do, I'm trying to find in my email the staff memorandum for this application, which I'm sure was sent around. I'm just getting a little bit lost and I found it. There is the staff memorandum. Perfect. Just because I have a feeling we will be moving ahead on this application tonight. I just want to make sure that I have what I need in front of me. So I do appreciate this rendering and this perspective. I think this only re-emphasizes my support for this this application. I spoke a bit last time we met about how I think this building fits in quite well with that block and the intent behind the zoning with your retail use, specifically because we've heard great things about this particular applicant, but even though the board can't vote on the applicant, the fact that they have been a positive family and business owner in the square in the past, I think that's speaks highly of this application, as well as it fitting well with the zoning and kind of meeting the goals and designs that we had for this type of a site. So I am still in support of this application as it looks. I think it looks beautiful. I look forward to hearing what my colleagues think while I go back to the staff memorandum to make sure that I've got all the bases covered. Anybody want to have anything to say? I know, Rob, you had raised some questions about the height of the first story in the past. I don't know if this remedies some of the concerns that you had, or if you still have some issues.
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up. Thank you for opening that. And I appreciate, I want to first say, I really do appreciate this second perspective, because it does help me get a better sense as to how this building will fit into the Union Square Plaza. I think that it may have been my fault in the way that I characterized my remarks last time, in the sense that I am not terribly concerned personally about whether the new building, the first floor, lines up with either the Independent or the police station. I actually think the operative sort of measurement here is sort of human scale design. And I think in the case of this particular location, it is located on the Union Square Plaza, and it actually prompted me to go back and sort of dig through kind of the Union Square neighborhood plan and sort of reflect on some of the feedback and the community input in that process. And time and again, it talks about human scale design. I'm 6 feet, and 18 feet is 3 times my height. So I think it's hard on these sort of small pieces of paper to visualize things. But at a human level, I personally think that in particular, sort of the windows above the canopy, they don't really give a great deal of visual interest, other than a view into sort of a void, if you will. Behind the storefront windows this is basic. And I'm not saying it in a pejorative way, but it's a waiting room for a new business, which I think a lot of folks have expressed strong interest in this dispensary, and it has a lot of community support. So I very much appreciate that. But I think that personally, I think with some really minimal design changes, moving the cornice down and putting in, instead of sort of open windows above the canopy, just some textured panels or brick or something to kind of just bring the scale down. I think it would go a long way. The police station is meant to be a bit of a monumental building. It was designed that way. It's wider. It's set back from the sidewalk. So I don't know that that's necessarily sort of the operative measure. My dog is demanding to get into this office. But I did want to just, the other thought I had as I was thinking about it over the past week was, the Union Square Plaza it's something that I think a lot of people, are kind of cherish. The Davis Square Plaza is probably the only equivalent location that I can think of in the city. And I know that the city is about to put a lot of investment into the plaza. It's the site of festivals, farmers market. There was just a candlelit vigil on Sunday at this very location. And so I'm just kind of thinking to myself, not to dwell on that, but a candlelit vigil outside, 18-foot windows that are sort of illuminated in the evening, of a waiting room with a security guard. I'm just not sure that's exactly the feeling that I think folks are hoping for. And I totally appreciate that this has been through a lot of process due to the pandemic and the zoning changes. So I guess I just say all that to say I think a little bit of changes would go a long way yet, and I think that could be accomplished through pretty minimal condition. I don't think it has to go back to further, further meetings and such. But those are my remarks.
And Rob, just curious, what sort of a condition would you like to see included? One that the applicant will work with staff to have I think I understand your concern to be, as I'm looking at the image that's being shared right now, you've got the awning. I think your concern are the windows above that awning, right? That's all I understand your concern?
Yes, sir. Yeah, sort of the windows above the awning, I think you could move the cornice down a little bit so it doesn't quite look like, just to sort of visually appear as if it's not an 18-foot first floor. And I just, one other thought I had was I did go back and look at some of the previous dispensaries that this board had approved, at least over the last couple of years. And in both instances, for the time that I've been on the board, we're talking 9 to 10 foot storefront windows. They had decorative art displays. The security guard was kind of in a booth or kind of in a room. None of that's here. And I guess I just think, why would we demand a lower standard on the Union Square Plaza than we are on ancillary streets to other places? Those are just, again, I'll conclude there.
So as I recall, the other recreational use facilities and medical use facilities that we permitted in the past, they've all been existing buildings. I don't think there's been any new building that this board has looked at that had a new construction site going in where there was also going to be a cannabis use in there. I think it's always been an existing, and a couple I can think of, the ones on Lower Broadway, the one on Highland Avenue, the one that's currently before us tonight in Davis Square. Those are the three that jump out at me, and those are all existing buildings. So I think I look at this almost I look at the building first, and then I look at the use second. Because if that tenant leaves, my question is what will go in, and will the modifications that you're proposing for the building for this particular tenant work as well with somebody else, or be appropriate to someone else? Because they could come back and, look, if we permit these applicants and this facility comes in, I hope they're very successful, but if they're not, and they leave and they want to sell and they want to have a new tenant come in, my question is, are the modifications we're making for this kind of tenant-specific concern something that can be undone for a future tenant? I'm wondering if your concern could be mitigated by keeping windows, but also putting some sort of a we've done it in other places too, like a sticky shield. So it doesn't look like a window. It doesn't look like a reflective surface. It doesn't look like you're just, like you were saying, with candles showing into an 18-foot window into a waiting room that might be vacant. So I'm wondering if we can come to a resolution on this, because I personally like the way it looks, but I also understand that you don't want to have 18-foot windows looking into a vacant or not an empty, enclosed storefront at night with people walking by the whole thing. I don't know what the usual operating hours for the proposed tenant would be, but I can see that concern saying, the place has been closed since 8 p.m. 9 p.m. and we've got a bunch of people in Union Square Plaza looking at a glass wall. I'm wondering if we could mitigate your concern by asking the applicant to put up some sort of like an adhesive screening on the top of that, so it doesn't look like just glass going all the way up. And if a new tenant comes in for which it might be more appropriate or desirable to have glass up top, get screening down.
Mr. Chair, if I may chime in, this is Will Chalfant from Colsa Design.
Yeah.
just regarding the film, because in the past we have looked at doing that. That's actually not allowed now by zoning, so which is why we haven't done it. They must be transparent, because we had an earlier iteration where we actually had old photographs of historic Union Square that had been adhered to the windows, so it could be sort of a quasi art installation while also shielding what's inside. And we were told in no uncertain terms that's simply not allowed now. So I appreciate the thought. I actually don't disagree at all, but we're trying to avoid variances, that's all. So
No, I appreciate the clarification on that. What I'd like is maybe a member of staff to come in and give some options, because I understand that we might have a difference of opinion on the board. I don't know what other members think, but I know that I would like the opportunity for this 18-foot glass facade to be there. I mean, I like it.
I would also, if I may, Mr. Chisholm Dash, that there is a 70% ground story fenestration requirement which is why all that glazing is there. I don't know that we meet it if you take those windows away.
we will not.
That's a concern.
If I may, this is Charlotte speaking. To address these questions, if the board wishes to condition adding film or some other form of glazing, the board is more than welcome to. I will note, and I believe we discussed this last meeting too, but fenestration requirements are only measured between 2 and 12 feet off of the ground level. I don't see the measurements on here, but if I recall correctly, the canopy is maybe 8 to 10 feet off of ground level. It's certainly at least 8 feet off of ground level. And so a good portion of that upper level glaze or upper level fenestration doesn't count towards that 70% fenestration requirement in the first place. And so covering it up would not reduce that 70% fenestration requirement.
So in layman's terms, that is something that we could condition that wouldn't violate the existing code.
That is correct.
Yeah. I'd be open to that. I mean, I'd like the option to keep it as clear glass if a different tenant does come in, and I think that's more of an appropriate look for a tenant that might, that's not making room for. I don't want future tenants from being able to use what I think is a pretty nice looking storefront, just because the first tenant it might not be as appropriate for the first tenant. But do other members have any comments on this issue or others? Amelia?
Mr. Chair and Rob, respectfully, I feel as though we're in this moment in time where this is the first small scale building that is being permitted for new construction in Union Square in a little while. And I feel as though this is very responsive to the design criteria of the commercial core district as defined in the new form-based code, and that this is the direction we have set for the redevelopment of Union Square as more generally. So I think if the building that Brownwood is in were to be redeveloped, this would be the similar aesthetic and degree of proportionality and scale. And that's what we've defined. We've defined that the ground story needs to both be and appear, I believe, as 18 feet. I'm sorry, Rob, you're shaking your head. I'm looking at the code on the other screen. I would appreciate staff weighing in here, but I feel like this feels not contextual because it's the first thing that we are seeing rendered here, and that this will in fact feel very of a scale and proportionate in relation to the very large development that is going up sort of catty corner on the square, and that we're reacting to it differently because there's this moment we're in that's a moment of transition where we're not seeing the other development that's been permitted or otherwise sort of the code has been designed to accommodate.
If I may, Mr. Chair, this is Charlotte speaking. So the code certainly requires buildings to be designed to have the ground store function as an 18-foot floor. In other words, be structurally built with an 18-foot floor, but the code does not require buildings to be designed to appear as 18 feet. There is the 12, or the fact that fenestration is measured only between 2 and 12 feet requires that the ground floor appear to be at least 12 feet tall, but a ground floor could visually appear to be 14, 15, 16 feet while still meeting the requirements of the code to have a structural 18-foot first floor. So it is up to the board's discretion on the, and to applicant's discretion on the visual height of the first floor, just not on the structural height.
I'm sorry, Amelia, were you through with your questions? Your comments?
I would certainly appreciate if Charlotte has the familiarity and could clarify. I feel as though I'm remembering a section of the code that requires the sort of tripartite structure of a building reflect the interior floor plates or levels, and that there's sort of a note somewhere else, perhaps in just the design criteria, that asks for the appearance to accurately level with the interior. I may be mistaken, but or it may not be something that's applicable to this neighborhood, but I don't think I completely made that up. Perhaps.
Amelia, that's exactly right. That's how it was presented to us. So this is all news to us that this could have been revised with the 12-foot ground floor. So I think you're correct.
I would note that we had, this is Adam Dash, we had multiple different designs, as required to go to the UDC. We had the original design, then you have to go to the UDC with 3 option designs. And then this sort of came out as a hybrid of all of those prior designs for the reasons that you can see visually here, how it lines up with the old police station pretty well. The canopy drops the front down to a more human scale. I mean, the canopy is 9 foot 4 inches off the ground, and we have to have 70% of that glass within 12 feet of the ground. I would have to do the math to see whether this puts us into a variance situation if you block that up. I don't know. I wasn't expecting to have to, because I think we did have an earlier iteration that had those windows closed. We didn't even have the windows there, and I think the request was to make it an 18-foot storefront through the UDC system. We'll do whatever, believe me, we'll do whatever, because this has gone on for a very, very long time, but it's a little tough to, I can't say that these changes are okay or not okay at this point. I wish I could talk to my client also, but we're not even in the same room, so.
I would suggest that if this is something the board is looking at modifying, that we put in a condition that would direct it a little bit more towards staff working with the applicant to make sure that they comply with the code. I mean, obviously we can go through it again and delay it another couple of weeks, but we're really talking about, can these windows be, the upper windows be modified a little bit and still maintain the code while the building is still designed the way it's designed? That's kind of I think the nuance of what it is that we're talking about here is 6 windows. A building that anybody else looks otherwise beautiful. I hate that this is the thing that's kind of hanging everybody up, and I'm trying to find a way to move us forward. And I see Sam is raising his hand, and I want to hear what you have to say on this one, Sam.
Yeah, I think with all due respect, I don't think we should be looking to modify this, and that's to everyone on the board here. I think it's okay that people can have different opinions about how this does or doesn't look. I think the process that this has been through already has, including a lot of people with frankly more expertise than this board has on things like the aesthetics of that window placement, and that process has been rigorous, and I do think that we are at risk of kind of taking personal opinions or interests and setting them to conflict with interests or opinions that other people in other arms of the city have. So I don't think we should be looking to change anything here. I do want to highlight one public comment that we got. This was from Ann Tate, who wrote during the last meeting and specifically responding to this concern as it was being raised in the last meeting. She wrote, in my opinion, as an architect and professor of architecture, I would say that those tall windows are the best part of the design, and I think they will look great. And it will be an aesthetic asset to the square. The tall first floor is a key aspect of giving some elegance to the square. So I completely agree with that. I think there are times where it's okay for us to disagree and perhaps vote accordingly, but I would strongly encourage that we move forward with this project as currently proposed.
Thank you, Sam. I want to clarify, Dan has indicated in the chat, which is probably only to us, that one of the concerns was that the applicant was previously designing a non-conforming ground story ceiling height and didn't have to do with the visuals of the window. So I think this is, even if we were to condition it, which I would, is to kind of leave it up to staff's discretion as to whether those should be shielded in some capacity. I agree with you that we should move forward on this application tonight. I like the way the building looks. I think others do. And I am happy to hear what other members of the board think this evening, but I think we should move forward on a vote for this application tonight. I don't think there's any reason to hold up. And I am happy to add that, that condition, giving some discretion to staff as to the best use of those upper windows, whether they should be shielded in some capacity or not. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to mention that I do agree with my fellow board member Sam Deming in his assessment. I mean, I like the structure. I like the windows. However, I'm also very much understanding of my other fellow board member Rob's concerns. So I think adding a condition to include the staff in further conversations is the appropriate measure, but I do think that we should move forward with this application with that condition in mind. And I think that the applicant and the team has really tried to indicate their flexibility and understanding throughout this rather detailed and arduous process. And I would like to really move things forward as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I am looking at the staff memorandum just to make sure that we've got. Yep, they're seeking two permits. One is a cannabis retail sales special permit, and the other is a site plan approval. So we're going to have to take two votes on this. So I just want to open up my little cheat sheet here on the language that we've agreed on to move these forward. So I will start with the site plan approval for this parcel. Does the board have any concerns about the required considerations? Do you agree with the findings in the staff memorandum? Okay. Also, does the board want to apply staff recommended permit conditions? I would, and I would also like to, the third one is additional conditions for the site plan approval. And my recommended condition to add would be that the applicant work with staff to determine whether shielding the upper portion of the windows on the first floor is appropriate for this use. I'll leave it to the discretion of the applicant and the staff to come up with different iterations of what that could look like if it's appropriate at all, with the expectation that it will not be permanent and can be modified based on new tenants, change of heart, anything like that. So with all of those, does anybody have any concerns? Do you want to apply the staff recommended conditions? And would you like to include my condition? So if anybody has any discussion on that, with specific issues, let's hear them now. Otherwise, I would like to move forward with the vote. Yes, Amelia.
Mr. Chair, just following up on something that we discussed in the last meeting, I think there was some discussion of the note in the staff memorandum around the use of one-way glass would appear as a reflective mirror. I believe the applicant assured us that was not part of the design at this stage. It seemed like it was something that the board fairly collectively was opposed to. I don't know if we want to address it with a condition or if we're content that design element has been moved past.
Thank you for reminding me. I do want to ask the applicant if, and staff, if there's been any movement on having the reflective window in the back be modified to something that is not reflective.
It's Adam Dash. Will, do you want to take that? Because I thought that had been addressed last time. but-
Yeah, I'm really unclear where that came from. We never had the intention of using one-way glass within the space itself. We talked about local artists dealing with the interior of that entry lobby area opposed to any sort of reflective glass.
Great. Does anybody else have any comments on the conditions and the other required findings of the site plan approval? Okay. Seeing none and following public testimony, review of the submitted materials, and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the Somerville zoning ordinance, I move to approve with the conditions that were listed, the site plan approval for this application, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes no.
Okay. With a 4-1 vote, the special permit application has been approved by the planning board. We also have a special permit for the cannabis use. And I'm looking at the proposed conditions now. They all seem fine to me and in keeping with the conditions that we've included in the past with other cannabis use locations. So I don't know if anybody has any additional conditions they'd like to suggest, or if they would like to apply the staff recommendations as well. Anybody have any concerns or questions on these conditions? Okay.
If I may,
see-
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Charlotte speaking. Can I confirm whether you are referring to both the March 22nd memo and the April 14th memo, or just the March 22nd memo? I know the April 14th memo was sent on the late side.
That's a good question. I'm looking at probably the earlier one, dated March 22nd. So let me actually bring up the most recent one. Could you tell me if there were many revisions to the conditions before I go through and look them up?
If the board wishes, I can briefly summarize all of the memo submitted
Yes,
yesterday.
please. As I'm going in to grab the most recent memorandum. Sorry about that.
Yeah, happy to. So the memo submitted to the board yesterday is just an update to the recommended conditions list for the cannabis retail sales special permit. The first change is that it fills in the information regarding the development covenant with the developer name and the date that the covenant was signed. And the second change is staff is recommending a condition that the applicant implement the transportation demand management strategies that the applicant proposed as part of the transportation impact statement submitted with this memo. That was something I had missed the first time around and would like to recommend at this stage. Those are the only changes in the memo.
Thank you. I don't know if I see the updated staff memorandum on this. When was it sent out? I see an email from Rebecca from the 9th. You don't see the most updated.
This memo was sent out on April 14th, and I believe it has been posted online, although that took some time due to technical issues with accessing the city website while remote.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying what the modifications in those conditions were. But obviously I will be going in and moving on the most recent staff memorandum. So if the board has any concerns about the required conditions that are in the most recent staff memorandum, if you'd like to apply the staff recommended permit conditions as been updated in the most recent memorandum, and I don't think there are any additional conditions we've discussed, please let me know if there are. No? Okay. Seeing none and following public testimony, review of the submitted materials and deliberation of the required considerations outlined by the Somerville zoning ordinance, I move to approve with conditions the special permit for the use of cannabis location here. Seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. Chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
With a unanimous vote, planning board approves with conditions that special permit. I believe those are all the required findings and votes we need to take on this application. Is that right, Charlotte?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, wonderful. Let me then go back to the agenda, which I lost along the way because I had too many tabs open.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, rest of the board.
Thank you, Adam, and good luck to you and your client.
Thank you.
I'm opening up the agenda. Sarah, is it true that 120 to 132 Middlesex Avenue is going to be requesting a continuance?
Yes, sir, it is. I believe there should be, hopefully Kyle is with us this evening. If you could be unmuted to make that request.
Okay,
This is
yes,
Charlotte
please, if you could unmute.
Kyle has been
Hi, Sarah.
unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Planning Board. My name is Kyle Greaves. I'm with VHB, and here on behalf of the applicant for 120 to 130 Middlesex Avenue project. As I think Director Lewis had let you know, we're working closely with Director Galagani, and while we have an agreement in principle on the development covenant, we have not yet finalized or executed the agreement. As such, we'd like to request a continuance to a subsequent hearing to allow us the opportunity to formalize the agreement. We look forward to the opportunity to come back and address the comments and questions that came up at the first planning board hearing. Thank you for the consideration.
Thank you, Kyle, very much. As I mentioned with the previous application, it's the practice of this board that there is a covenant that is going to be signed. It's the practice of this board to wait until the covenant is at least finalized, if not signed, before we move forward on a vote, in order to make sure that any conditions that we have and the conditions that are listed in that covenant are binding and can be upheld and enforced. So I appreciate you working with staff and with the city to move forward on that covenant. The chair will move to continue the discussion of Middlesex Avenue application until our next meeting, which is April 29th.
Okay.
And if we need further continuances thereafter, we can obviously make them. But I'll just for the sake of ease, go to our next meeting.
Okay, I think that works.
And you know what? If you need additional time, we can continue further. That's not a concern at all.
No, absolutely. We'll work closely with Director Lewis and Director Galagani. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Chair moves to continue to the 29th, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Have a unanimous vote, and we will see you in 2 weeks. And if you need more time, you can get it.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
We have 2 more items on our, well, we actually have 3. One's other business, but I'd like to take you last, Sarah, if you don't mind. We have 2 more. One is 255 Elm Street and one is 240 Elm Street. I note that the only applications before us tonight have to do with cannabis use, the facilities. And I'm wondering if this was a move by staff to try to get these as close to 420 as possible while still being on a regularly scheduled planning board meeting. I would have happily moved our meeting to the Tuesday if we could do it, but here we are.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. I just wanted to note briefly that because of some formatting problems with our web application for posting materials, it seems like the 3 Hawkins Street project seems to have fallen into the gutter of the copy of the agenda. There is 3 Hawkins coming back, having done their work with the.
Oh, I'm
urban
so
design.
sorry. You know what? And I knew that too. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You know what? I will take Hawkins Street next because we have previously opened you all, and you have new plans and we've seen them. And I apologize for skipping you. It does look weird with the formatting and I skipped right over you. So I would like to open 3 Hawkins Street. If you can open up new renderings, because we had asked you previously to basically redo it because it didn't look so hot. So could we please have the applicant unmuted and
This
have
is Charlotte speaking.
green chair.
I have unmuted Scott Zink, who is part of the application team. Scott, if you could let me know who else from your team needs to be unmuted, that would be great.
Hi, Charlotte. If you could unmute David Lilly and Peter Quinn as well, that'd be great.
Yes, I will unmute them. David, you are unmuted, and Peter, I'm looking for you. Might Peter Quinn be under a different name? I'm not seeing him in the list. Or Peter, if you want to raise your hand. Oh, never mind. He's a presenter. Ignore that comment. All of your team members are unmuted.
Thank you. This is Peter Quinn. Good evening. Just to give you the latest history, I first want to say this process of going back to the urban design or going to the urban design committee and to the neighborhood has been very fruitful for us. And so we appreciate that guidance from the board. We did first take a pass at addressing some of your concerns and sending those to the urban design committee a little bit, in a hurry, of course, because of the schedule, but nonetheless, we addressed the major concerns of the facades and the detailing of them. We did get some feedback from the urban design commission to change some things. We also showed those same drawings to the neighborhood and got similar feedback. And so I'm presenting tonight sort of the project as it's been distilled from that process. And I'm happy to go back to any reference material, including what we presented to you originally and what we showed the Urban Design Commission as well, if that's helpful. But I don't want to get bogged down with so many different versions of the drawings. But in any case, at this point, I will show you where we're at right now. So this is the, can everybody see that? It's not clear to me whether I'm sharing the screen or not. Let me see. Okay. Can somebody confirm that you can see my the building design? Yep. Okay. Good. So one of the issues that came up is whether we should have we needed to differentiate the facades because of the 100-foot rule, and this was brought up by a board member, and we did try to address it with by extending what is now the kind of gray brown area almost all the way to the right, but with comments from the Urban Design Commission and the neighborhood, we pulled it back to be just a 3-bay segment of the building, as well as the piece of the building that turns the corner in the park as well. So I'll show you that. So what we've done, and what we've done here is to create a little bit of a separated facade, also contemporary. We had tried a little bit more traditional in its look that we took to the Urban Design Commission. But what we've done is we've eliminated the bay on the end here, which was something they asked us to consider doing. And we've also made the bays, fit in with a more contemporary look than what we had originally shown to the Urban Design Commission. I'll just show you that briefly. This is what we had taken to the Urban Design Commission, which, as you can see, the bays were, much more traditional looking, and the tone of this whole thing was darker. There were kind of more traditional patterning around the windows and the like. There was a lot of discussion about this. It was good discussion. We finally agreed to something that was more like this. Here. Bring it up. There we go.
Peter, can you go back to that slide that you had two back that showed the bay on the corner?
Yes, that we always had a bay here, and when we showed it to the UDC, they thought that it actually diminished the value of having a Lake Street facade with bays. In other words, it was too much, and so they felt like, yep.
No, I'm just not sure I agree with that assessment. I think part of the concern that I have with the renderings that you showed us now don't have enough. Right. I think if you're sitting in that park, which is something that we approved a few months ago, if you're sitting in that park and enjoying it because it's designed to be a place where people will sit and stay, and you're looking at that side of a building, I think it looks too flat, right? I think you're looking at the side of a building. Just walking by, and if it was kind of a more active use or not an activated space, I did understand that. But for somebody who might be sitting there, I think it's not as visually, it's not as visually pleasing as, maybe not exactly what you had 2 slides ago, but at least there was a little bit more of a variation of what you were looking at than maybe kind of a flat wall, some window holes punched in. So I just like prior to the UDC, when we had the DRC, I didn't always agree with their interpretation of what was appropriate. But that's my way, the permit granting authority. So I think it's a lot. So I just wanted to see that again versus what you now. So let's keep going. I'll reserve my comments until.
Okay. Yeah. Sure, no problem. Okay, so I'm using roughly the bullet points that were given to us by the UDC as recommendations. So the 2 contemporary facades rather than a traditional facade next to a contemporary. And, we did that by making the base and the siding, more contemporary looking. The divisions between the Lake Street facade should occur so that 3 townhouses appear on Lake Street, and that's what I was showing you a second ago, that we divided it this way. And then this part, which wraps around Hawkins Street, is in the wider siding and in a different layout of window pattern. The next thing they asked us to consider was the rightmost box window be considered for removal. That's what we were just discussing, Mr. Chairman. And then no, this one here. There was a bay here originally, and we did get rid of that and just flattened it like we've done elsewhere on the white facade. And that made sense, if we were trying to make a facade here that had a different relationship to the street and in color and detail. So then the next statement was the projecting box window facing the abutting civic space should be reconsidered. So that's where we're at with that. That's how that came about. That's this facade here. Ground story brick and horizontal cast stone band should create surface relief. I think that was a board member request as well. We did do that with some application of some color brick lines in the brick I think I was probably not as clear as I should have been in the original presentation about how these windows are actually recessed in a brick and set back 5 or 6 inches, creating a ledge. So that has quite a bit of shadow relief around it. And we also have these solar screens over the entries as well, and people can grow vines on those and the like. And those extend out a couple of feet from the cast stone behind it. Let's see. Black lines are brick as they pass through. The brick is now labeled as a full bed brick with a colored mortar and dark brick painting. Just to clear up that ambiguity that somebody had pointed out. Let's see, the recessed stoop at this corner, which was not reading properly, has now been turned back to being a regular townhouse type entry as the others were. The landscape design abutting the civic space should not appear to be a ribbon driveway as was originally intended. Oh, there was one other thing before I go to that. There was also a comment that the lobby entry should be better defined and clearly visible. So we did in fact address that, if I may. We actually shifted the entry to more in the center and away from the automobile garage access. This now has grouped all the windows together for the entry and for the lobby that's right inside there. Next item on their list is the landscape component. I'm just going to bring up the landscape plans here that were clarified. I think in the last drawing, we had not gotten a complete idea of what the civic layout would be. I believe it's still somewhat in flux, but we are in fact proposing to make a connection through the property over this right of way that we have on the neighboring property, so that this would be a gravel slope walkway at the easement, and it leads to a common patio that extends out toward the park, creating a nice social space. And we line the edge of that with landscaping in order to provide a little bit of a buffer between this common area, civic area, and the building itself. So now, based on what we know, and we have the same landscape architects, we know there'll be a walkway coming down from Somerville Avenue, connect through here and go right down through to Lake Street. And actually, this is Olive Square right here, and it's been a goal to connect the two pedestrian. Olive Square is obviously the card as well, but it does connect to a fab building, at the back here as well. So it makes a nice connection through. And then the last one was the commission advocated for provision of street trees along Lake Street. So that is something we're certainly open to doing. I think it just needs to be conditioned, if you will, through this process if we're to receive approval. And that will be something that we can take to the discussion about the whole curb line revision of Lake and Hoffman Street. And then finally, it was recommended that the 2 exterior parking spaces should be replaced with landscaping and additional native trees. Now, that was one that we did not do. It's just simply a matter of what we feel we can spare parking spaces. We have 15 spaces. 2 of them have to be reserved for shared cars. The owner is just very concerned about being able to make the project work and losing 2 more spaces. So, I suppose
to be clear though, Peter, and maybe staff can just confirm this. I think you guys are within that walk shed, such that you wouldn't necessarily have to put as much in anyway. Is that correct?
That's true. I'm not pretending otherwise. I'm just saying, that you look at a development with 59 units, and sure many of them are small. you know, it's a delicate balance. And I think, you know, I certainly am working with a lot of developers who are more than willing to try to see if this will work, you know, to have fewer cars, fewer than one per unit. Wasn't too long ago when people were doing more than one per unit. So it's kind of an experiment, if you will, to see how it works. We know it works in other cities, and you know, certainly.
I'd love you guys to be able to talk to some folks that aren't in the Watershed that think that they should be. It was a point of contention a few weeks ago for a different application, but I appreciate your comments on that.
Yeah. So that's the gist of our presentation.
Thank you very much. I know that Dan has mentioned that he had some discussion points on feedback and conditions that I'd like to hear before the board gets into a little bit more of a substantive discussion, just so we have a better idea of what it is that we're talking about.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I attended both the additional neighborhood meeting and design review for this project. We also reviewed some public comments that had come in over the course of the time period since they last were before you. We believe that the outstanding issues are primarily about the sidewalk design and how that interfaces with the previous condition that we suggested for this project to improve the both Hawkins and Lake with bump outs and improve crosswalks, especially the crosswalk between crossing Lake Street that would connect two corners of Hawkins, and then also in front of their garage entrance into the building. The Urban Design Commission definitely talked about whether or not there should be street trees. They preferred street trees over the frontage planters that are shown here, and also the public feedback advocated for street trees. I guess the outstanding question that we have is whether or not the bulb outs that we're also seeking to have created are the place for these street trees, or if they should be installed within the sidewalk itself, and the bump outs are just bump outs. All of that can be determined through the interplay of engineering, mobility, and public space and urban forestry, figuring out the actual right design that should happen in the right of way here. I'll also reiterate that there's been ongoing conversation about whether or not a completely raised intersection is appropriate for Lake and Hawkins Street. That's still to be determined, and why the condition is written the specific way it is, because public space and urban forestry is currently, I brought this up last time, but the Union Square Streetscape project that will also rehabilitate the plaza that we were talking about earlier will improve Hawkins Street. It's within the bounds of the planned area for improvements to the streetscape of the larger Union Square area. It is highly likely that the curbs move, that on-street parking will change, that directional flow could change on Hawkins Street. That is so many moving pieces. We think this project should, based off of the feedback from everybody, provide street trees, provide bulb outs, and provide at least an improved crosswalk connecting the corner of crossing Lake Street. Sorry, that's hard to describe. Crossing Lake Street, connecting the corners of Hawkins at the as a minimum, and that the design would be figured out in collaboration with relevant city departments. And the last thing that we saw in the public feedback is primarily, I would say, related to whether or not the flatness of the building. There was some conversation amongst the immediate neighbors about whether or not the white portion of the building could be designed to not be coplanar with the brown portion. I don't know whether or not these renderings accurately reflect how much it may or may not be coplanar. But I do want to acknowledge that some of the public feedback brought up allowing the white side to project all the way to the same plane that the bay windows of the left-hand side are projecting. By my read right here during the public hearing, that would still be behind setbacks. that would effectively increase the floor area of all of the dwelling units there on the corner. I believe it would impact 2 dwelling units on each floor. But that is within the realm of possibility, it appears. So, you know, if you were to.
Can I interrupt you and
Sure.
And try to clarify for my stupid lay brain what it is that you're saying about that white portion? I think what you're saying is the depth of the right portion of that building that's currently colored white, and we're gonna have a discussion about that in a little bit, is going to be as jutted out as the bays. Is that what you're saying? So that each of the units that are in that section of the building will be slightly bigger than others that are set back. Is that what you mean?
Feedback from members, yes, feedback from members of the public suggested that. I went and looked to see if it would still be behind setbacks, but it's a true statement. So it could be, you know, offset by 6 inches, or those, I believe those are projecting about 3 feet, or so there's a range in there that it could project if you wanted to go that far. It may already be not coplanar. It may be offset by 4 or 5 inches. We've had that impact with the windows on this building. So, but that's the extent of the feedback. I believe it's primarily focused on the sidewalk design and whether or not this corner piece is coplanar.
I must apologize that I did not hear that at the neighborhood meeting. I would have addressed it, but I know we by code we need an offset between these 2 planes. And,
Peter, this was feedback emails to the planning board from the public.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yep. We do have we you know the tan part on the left we've projected forward about 5 inches from the white. Right here.
So the tan part is deeper or shallower from the street than the white portion of the building on the right?
Shallower. It's just
that's what I thought. That's what I thought. And the bays obviously stick out a little bit. And,
beyond that. Yeah.
And what Dan is suggesting, or what Dan has raised, is that the depth from the tan part of the bays should be an equal amount of distance from the tan part as the white portion of the building. I think that's what we're talking about, but I don't have the.
I think we can see this in a 3D, maybe a little better. So you see how there's
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
If I may, I don't want to sound like I'm suggesting that it should be. The public feedback came back and suggested that it could be, and I verified that would still be behind setbacks. So if you also chose, that would be in line with all the measurements.
Thank you, Dave, very much. I also want to clarify that one of the suggestions that you made about the street improvements and the street trees, was that something that you were suggesting could be worked out within conditions to be perfected through staff and different city agencies?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the current condition would be conditioned to actually be paved. The increased sidewalk width would be fully paved and new street trees installed in the sidewalk. And then we would use the standard language for street improvements that taps the relevant city departments for the final design.
I think that's the appropriate place to have those discussions instead of with this board necessarily. I agree that street improvements are always positive enhancement to a new large building. We might not be the best arbiters of what makes a better street improvement and street use. So great. I would like to open it up to members of the planning board for comments and questions. I'm going to reserve some of my additional comments and questions until you have raised yours. I've already spoken a little bit on this one, and I want to hear where you're at. Anybody? Rob?
Thank you. I'll be brief. I also support the street tree alternative. I think that would enhance the street. I know the neighbors suggested it, provide some shade canopy, so I agree with that. I also think, I didn't quite catch, how it's supposed to be in the rendering, but I do find it makes sense to me that the white part project out farther from the tan part to show that that's sort of a different massing, a different, building expression. And I guess the last thing I might throw out there is I do find it really hard to interpret some of the colors and the textures from the renderings, and that's not a statement that's just on the architect at all. It's the challenge of looking at these. And I might suggest that maybe one condition be that the materials and the color palette be submitted to the UDC, prior to final, construction, just because it's hard for me to interpret tan versus green versus yellow versus some of the brick. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments or? Yeah, Amelia.
I would echo Rob's sentiments on both the preference for, or the inclusion of a condition for street tree accommodation as the engineering and mobility and planning departments see fit, and the suggestion that the final color palette and material selection be to the UDC and or staff for final sign off. I think there is a lot going on in this building in terms of materiality and palette, and it would be great to make sure that it's all consistent and contextual. I'd also just like to thank the applicant for their work with the UDC going back through this process and presenting these revisions to us. I do think this building is much more contextual and appropriate for its location, and grateful for the UDC's better role in articulating the ways we needed minor modifications to get there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else right now? So I think we're definitely moving in the right direction on this building, but like I was starting to say earlier in your presentation, I'm sorry I cut you off on it. Peter, I do think the side of the building that's facing the park could use a little bit. I still think it looks a little too uninteresting, right? Because if people are going to be staying in that park and effectively looking at the side of the building, it's not like other applications where we've had a side of a building, but it's likely that something is going to be built next to it, so it doesn't necessarily have to be as nice. I mean, this is a building that's going to be, and it's going to be a park, and we've already permitted that. That's what's going to be there. You want to make sure that when you walk by or when you're using the outdoor space, you're not just looking at kind of that side of a building. I think I think it's not as visually appealing as it could be. I'm not sure what you could do. I agree that you shouldn't necessarily have an additional bay on the corner, but I'm wondering if there is a way to make the side of this building look a little bit less like the side of a building that hasn't had much put into it. It just looks like I said, flat walls and windows in it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear some ideas or maybe see some ideas to make this a little bit less boring to look at.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is Peter Quinn.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that one thing we could do, as you can see here, we have a side entry, which in plan is actually pretty significant because it is the access to the park for the residents. They have a common patio out here that they share visually, if not in practice, with the park. Let's see here. This should take you through it. So we have a outdoor entry here, and this is a big covered area, which is very nice for outdoor seating in case of rain. So one thought would be to, going back to this elevation, would be to put something like a bay in this one area here, and perhaps even center it to that big opening that we have, that leads into a hallway that connects to the rest of the building, as well as to a common living room that looks out to the park.
Yeah,
I think that would.
I gotta tell you, looking at the rendering, I didn't even realize that was a major doorway. It just looked like, part of somebody's. I think, had you said this is the main doorway to the park that everybody's going to use and come out and come in, and this is might be one of the primary entrances and exits of this building, I'd say make it look like a much nicer doorway space.
Yeah,
we had a long discussion about a beautiful facade with an awning, and windows that extended a little beyond the awning, and made that a striking entrance to the building. And this just looks, like I said, looks at the side of the building. I would love to be able to see, because if I'm looking at the drawing that that you shared here, if you're sitting at the top, you're not seeing a lot of the white side of that building, right? That's going to be
you see where this dash line is?
Yeah,
that's the extent.
The other building is, right?
The estimated extent of 346. So you're correct.
Yeah.
You see mostly this.
So the portion of the building that you see, I think it would be. I see there's somebody in the and it's nice. I think it would make a lot of sense to make sure that that section of the building looks like an inviting place to be. I don't know if it would be helpful to add a bay type structure like you suggested. I would like to see certain ideas, and you've worked with this board for a long time. We've oftentimes asked applicants to come back with 2 or 3 ideas that they could incorporate to address certain concerns that we've had. And I just want to make sure that as this building, it's really 2 buildings that are going next to each other that I could join as part of the neighborhood, that they're as nice as they possibly can be. So I just want to make sure that we're not moving forward with something that could be just a little more perfect. The side of the building is going to be blocked by the other building. I think that looks boring, but it's going to be blocked by the building anyway. So I'd like some differentiation between what you've got and what would be an inviting entryway and side of that building that people will be able to see and enjoy, because people are going to be living next to this, these 2 sites for a long time, and they should enjoy the buildings in their neighborhood. So,
is this something? I don't know if you have some other concerns too, but is this something that could be conditioned, or do you want us to come back with that?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not sure. I'd like to see some additional renderings, just because I think the whole side of the building kind of looks a little flat and boring. I would like to see you come back with a couple of ideas, and if that's something that the rest of the board agrees with, I think we might be in a better place to move on this application if we could actually see some additional variation. We know that the UDC didn't like the bay necessarily, but it's my understanding that the neighborhood also didn't like the flatness, and that's something we share as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Rob, I saw your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to concur with you. I think that the side facing the park is honestly a fantastic opportunity to, either through some sort of an architectural element or some type of public art, something on that side of the building to say, you are in a park. If you are in a park, that's a nice place to be. I think I agree that door is an entryway that kind of gets lost. So I've seen some nice murals on brick buildings. I'm not sure, I don't know that one could do that onto a clapboard building such as this, but I think that it's a great opportunity, put it that way. Thank you.
And if you could, Peter, kind of turn the building around, so I see that corner of the white that we were talking about. It doesn't necessarily matter to me how far out that white extends, but I do appreciate that the community has suggested that it does.
I just want to say, I think it would overwhelm the corner. We do have a projection on side facing Hawkins, and we distinctly separated that from.
What I'd like to see then is, from what I think I'm looking at, is the white section is jutting out more than the bays. I'd love to be able to see a rendering where it is flush with the bays, which is something that Dan had suggested too. Because you're right, I think it could overwhelm the visual of that corner. But if it's scaled back a little bit to be flush with the bays, it might not have that effect. So
Is
those
there
are
something, yeah, is there something that we could come back and show you options and we can just all decide?
I think so. I'd also like to see some color variation on the white, on the big white walls. I think they look a little plain and boring, especially if that's the side that's on the corner that, two different streets are going to see. It might need some excitement.
There were a couple of UDC members who had said they really liked the white. What are you gonna do, right?
And we're back to angling horns with design, and that's okay. Amelia, can you raise your hand, or was that?
I was just going to ask if perhaps in our next conversation or in this conversation, I am also having a very hard time tracking the requests that are being made or the discussion that is being had about the depth of the various features and facades. And I'm finding it useful to look at some of the site plans that are essentially aerial plans to understand clearly where those different projections come out to rather than the renderings. And I think it might be useful for the applicant to perhaps walk us through one of those as they relate to the partitions in color. It would be helpful to me. I don't know if it might be helpful to the rest of the board.
It would for me, yes.
I'm looking at sheet A3 in the plan set and wondering if something like that just might be worth.
Sorry. Hang on a second. A3.
By all means, make a different selection, but that's what I had pulled up to try to wrap my head around this question.
A3. Yeah, so this is just a floor plan, second to fourth floor.
The change that it has been raised or is being discussed about the extent of where the white demarcation ends, is that the sort of plan left center jet?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. So see where my cursor is? Mm-hmm. Over here. That's where the brown begins, and then it wraps around past these two bays and ends on this demising wall line. Okay.
So the suggestion is for a change in the projection at that point where your hand is now.
Right, to take this and project it out to the depth of the bay and then meet it up at the corner with the projection that we have on Hawkins Street. Okay. You see there, the facade on Hawkins Street projects out, and all behind the setback, but nonetheless it projects out. So the idea here is that I think what the person who wrote the email was suggesting was that this would project forward this white area would project forward to the same plane as the bay that you see behind this ghosted house.
Yeah, I'll just say from my perspective, I hear what you're saying about too much projection. Honestly, I think 6 inches would be enough to create that edge, but I'm not, I don't want to sit here and micromanage over inches, but any degree of depth change I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I think something in the 6 to 1 foot range, 6 inch to 1 foot would be appropriate.
Anybody else have any comments or questions right now? Because we will be seeing this applicant again in the near future with some additional renderings that hopefully address some of our comments this evening. No. All right. Thank you very much. We will see you again. When do you want? Our next meeting is the 29th. Do you want to come back then? Do you think you'll have the opportunity to do it?
Well, yeah, excuse me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Just wanted to ask Dan by when he would need drawings for that 29th.
Mr. Chair, that'd be up to you. We normally send your packets the Friday before the hearing.
Yeah.
It'd be a week from tomorrow, I think.
23rd.
Yeah.
Just so you know, if it's not on the 29th, the meeting we have after that is the 20th of May. So it's either kind of hurry up or you've got a couple of weeks to.
You can fit us on the 29th. We'll take it. We'll be back.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the chair will move to continue this application to the 29th. Seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
All right. We'll see you all in a few weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe that sorry.
What?
The 29th, I believe we have a joint meeting with the land use committee. Will we also be hearing cases in a normal meeting following that?
Yes. It's going to be a long night for the planning board, trust me. Okay. Going back to what was previously a theme of the evening, I would like to open up to, because this applicant is already in business and they're looking to get a special permit to expand their existing use, I'd like to open 240 Elm Street First Sierra Naturals.
This is Charlotte speaking. Let me go through and unmute everyone who needs to be unmuted.
Thank you.
Sean O'Donovan.
And as a reminder to the applicant and their counsel, just introduce yourself for the record.
Sean O'Donovan, you are unmuted. Feel free to help me remember everyone who's on your team. Lewis Carger, you're unmuted. Dwan Packnett, you're unmuted. David Rosenberg, you're unmuted. Steven Saragusa, you're unmuted. Am I missing anyone? Oh, Michelle Foley, you're unmuted. Okay, I think I have everyone. Can someone from the applicant team confirm if I'm missing anyone that you expect me or that you expect to be here?
Sean O'Donovan?
He is unmuted. He may need to unmute himself, however.
And I think we're going to need Jefferson Smith's, he has the slide deck. Great. This is Dwan, by the way.
Jefferson, I am making you, Jefferson, a presenter so you can share your screen. Okay, Mr. Chair, I think that is everyone. And I will hand it over to the applicant.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Should we continue, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please, Sean.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Lees. It's a pleasure to be before your board. Sean O'Donovan on behalf of the applicant Sierra Naturals. I'm here this evening with our CEO and founding member of the company, Mr. David Rosenberg, along with the full complement of our team. The speakers this evening will be Dwan Packnett, who's our Vice President of Government Relations and Community Affairs, as well as Michelle Foley, who is our Director of Retail. Mr. Rosenberg and his partners came to Davis Square, Mr. Chairman, in 2016 and had their first marijuana advisory committee meeting. And at that particular time, they were applying for the RMD, the Registered Medical Marijuana Dispensary. Since that time, Sierra went for a special permit in the spring of 2017, and then opened their doors in September of 2017 in the subterranean space below Be Fresh. And I would submit, Mr. Chairman, they have been a great partner for Davis Square in Somerville. With virtually any instance whatsoever at that site since 2017. Sierra responded, I would submit, to not only adapting themselves as a fabric of Davis Square, but also to COVID-19 during the pandemic, working with the city of Somerville. We have a great partnership as well with the Community Action Agency of Somerville. Procedurally, Mr. Chairman, we later in the fall of 2020 and into the winter of 2021, we filed our application for adult use, which brings us before you today because we filed our DRA application as well as our licensing board application. We received our license approval from the board, rather the commission, I'm sorry, in late January of 2021. And we're here before you today for our use permit at 240 Elm Street. When we most recently were before the MAC, Mr. Chairman, we received a 14.5 out of 15 possible points from the MAC. I would submit, Mr. Chairman, that through our presentation, you will see that all the special permit considerations that your board will be reviewing, both in standards, are all to be met. We're here to answer any questions whatsoever if we can. After the presentation, naturally, we're in the MR4 zone. We meet with all of the criteria that's called for walkability through summer vision and good paying jobs. Our employees are all unionized. And at the end of the presentation, Mr. Chairman, we just had a quick question, if we may, really on process about how we deal with going to, we know we have to, in the report, go to the licensing board because we're appointment only for 6 months. It's also discussed in your in the report to your board as well. And just for clarification purposes, we're hoping to chat with you about that at the end, very briefly, if we may. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our Vice President, Dwan Packnett.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, members of the Planning Board. Good evening. My name is Dwan Packnett. I'm the Vice President of Government Relations and Community Investment for Sierra Naturals. Founded in 2013, Sierra Naturals is one of Massachusetts' first seed-to-sale medical companies and has grown into one of the state's largest cannabis employers with 250 employees. Our growth has been thoughtful with purpose that the cannabis industry become an economic engine for enormous community benefit. What matters most to me and why I'm proud to work in the cannabis industry and with this amazing team is Sierra's commitment to community and diversity and inclusion as core values driving our success. Sierra Naturals has voluntarily unionized our workforce, becoming the first Massachusetts cannabis company to do so. Our Somerville First resident hiring preference will focus on hiring workers from groups typically underrepresented in the cannabis industry, those from disproportionately impacted communities, people of color, women, and veterans. And we are a founding member of Cultivate Ed to ensure a CORI record is not a barrier to a career in the cannabis industry or here at Sierra Naturals. This is why Sierra Naturals is an important alternative point of entry into the cannabis industry for people of color. because of our secure living wage union jobs and local management that offer employees a broad range of jobs and opportunities for advancement, features unique to publicly traded companies like CIRA. But in order to recruit, hire, and retain a workforce that reflects the diversity and values of Somerville, CIRA Naturals will be contributing over $475,000 per year in Somerville in fees, in-kind contributions, and cash investment in local community organizations, similar to our partnership with the Community Action Agency of Somerville. Community is the most important aspect of our business as it defines who we are as a company. And after 3 years of successful operation, we consider ourselves deeply connected members of the Somerville community. You see us often, whether through our discreetly located store at 240 Elm Street for the past 3 years, or our collaboration with Somerville's Marijuana Community Benefits Association, headed by Somerville's Health and Human Services Department, Doug Kress, Matt Mitchell, and Kira Vaughn, to create meaningful prevention, diversion, and mental health programs for children and young adults. Or our donation of personal protective equipment as a thank you to the City of Somerville and Nurse Harris for comforting and counseling our Somerville employees during the initial outbreak of COVID last year, and Charlotte Lee's expediting the city's review of new Cannabis Control Commission COVID home delivery and curbside service protocols. These are just a few examples of our work in partnership with the City of Somerville. Next slide, please. However, since you last saw us in the License Commission hearing on January 25th, we have been hard at work building new programs in collaboration with Somerville community leaders like Yvette Wilkes, who I am pleased to report is now as CIRA Naturals' new Director of Community Programs. We participated in the first Lunar New Year Rolling Parade, Year of the White Metal Ox, on February 21st to engage the Asian community at this moment of heightened awareness of racial violence. The motorcade crossed Greater Boston from Boston to Quincy, including Somerville. We are working with Somerville Media Center's Jason Corey, Dave Ortega, and Kat Powers, who are creating short videos focused on job opportunities in our Somerville and Milford facilities. And we are using our webinar series as a starting point to purposely engage communities disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, beginning with our Accelerator 2.0 participants, entrepreneurs Leah and Sia Samura, in late February. And just last week, we featured Cultivate Ed, the first in the nation workforce development and quarry expungement program for re-entering citizens in the cannabis industry, with Mr. Shaitan Green on the panel, who completed the Cultivated Fellowship at CIRA Naturals and is now working in our Somerville store. Coming up in May, we will focus on Frank's Friends and its founder, Frank Shaw's partnership with CIRA Naturals in 2019 to initiate a highly effective program to provide AIDS patients affordable access to cannabis. CIRA Naturals looks forward to working with the City of Somerville and our fellow Davis Square cannabis operators to establish a Davis Square Advisory Board to provide a platform for community members to give feedback and to share ideas for best practices in mitigating neighborhood impacts, if any. Thank you, and now I'd like to introduce my colleague, CIRA Naturals Director of Retail, Michelle Foley.
Thank you, Dwan. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. My name is Michelle Foley. I'm CIRA's Director of Retail. I've been running CIRA's retail operations for just over 3 years now. I have over 15 years of experience running high volume retail stores, and my office is currently located at the 240 Elm Street building. Since CIRA Naturals opened our doors almost 4 years ago, we've shown many people that live or work in Davis Square, including some elected officials, just where exactly CIRA Naturals is located. As a team, we couldn't be more proud of this. It means we're doing an excellent job of keeping our promise to the neighborhood and to the City of Somerville. Our approach is informed by our extensive experience and our intentional design principles. Our facility is located at the basement level and is purposely constructed to be modest, inconspicuous, safe, and secure. As you can see here, CIRA Naturals has 2 entrances to our facility, one on Elm Street and one on Chester Street. There will be no outdoor queuing or lines now or in the future. We're an excellent operator, and this will not change with the addition of adult use sales. Our logistics will be the same, and we have the ability to scale with the same impact to the community. Next slide, please. We're proposing just 2 small improvements to the interior of the facility, adding a few point of sale systems and optimizing our customer flow. With 4,800 square feet in the basement level, we have a large floor space and hallways to queue customers, and this will ensure no lines outside ever. You can see our proposed layout here. It may change a bit during our upcoming discussions with the CCC and the City of Somerville. All customers will enter through a secure entrance and form 3 lines, 1 for medical, 1 for adult use, and express online pickups. All customers will exit through the door at the far left of the floor plan, indicated here by the red line. I'd also like to note that the exterior of the building will not change. So if you didn't know Sierra was here before, it's going to be equally hard to know that we're still here. Next slide, please. Just like our stores today, we are not going to be a disruption, a problem, or a nuisance to Davis Square. Sierra's security monitors also allow us visibility to all of the sidewalks and areas around the dispensary, so we can react quickly should any lines start to form, which again, we do not anticipate happening given our efficient operations and building layout. We fully understand that shorter wait times correlate directly to the satisfaction of our guests and our neighbors. Next slide, please. We pride ourselves in having a professional and welcoming atmosphere in our dispensaries. Sierra's retail workers are screened thoroughly and go through an extensive 2-week training program on product, compliance, and service and store operations. Our security measures meet or exceed all standards for local banks and financial institutions, meaning that Sierra is now and will continue to be one of the safest locations in Davis Square. As a result of everything I just spoke to, we've had 0 incidents for break-ins, 0 incidents for diversion, and 0 incidents for public nuisance in almost 4 years of operations. It's worth noting that Sierra Naturals is known by the Cannabis Control Commission as the gold standard for compliance and prevention of diversion. They use our dispensaries to train new inspectors on an example of what a well-run and compliant dispensary should look like. We will be appointment only for the first 6 months when we launch, and this isn't new to us as we've already successfully implemented appointment only at our Davis Square location. We operated as an essential business when COVID-19 first hit. We never shut down. It did force us to become more efficient than ever, given the challenging operating a retail business during the height of COVID-19. I do want to point out that we chose to implement appointment only last March for both the safety and operational reasons due to the pandemic. We look forward to adding walk-in customers back as we operated walk-in only for 2.5 years prior to going appointment only last March. After opening for adult use, we would only make the decision to add walk-ins back when we felt it was appropriate, both from an operational and a safety standpoint. We have proven that we always make the right decision for our communities, our customers, and our employees, as we did last year as an example. Next slide, please. It's important to us in the neighborhood that has surrounded us in Davis Square over the past 4 years to have a reliable and safe cannabis operation. That's why we take our role as a secure location very seriously, which naturally includes our responsibility to prevent diversion to minors. All product is accounted for daily and kept behind a secure lock counter and stored in a limited access vault. All customers enter through a secure vestibule after having their IDs shown to the camera. They're buzzed in and they have their IDs checked a second time by security. Furthermore, we have a 0 tolerance policy for the unauthorized removal of cannabis products by any employee, guest, or vendor. Next slide, please. We have 0 incidents of diversion and have contract services that tightly control all aspects of safety throughout the transportation of our products. All vehicles are GPS tracked, closely monitored throughout their delivery, and all routes and arrival times are randomized, and product is delivered in unmarked vehicles. Our transport of deposits are extremely secure. Our contractors specialize in covert transportation of cash. The officers are plainclothes and they also drive unmarked vehicles. Next slide, please. We understand that our customers will primarily come from the surrounding neighborhood and will want to walk, ride, or take any number of public transit options available in the area. This is why our 240 Elm Street location was specifically chosen for its transit-friendly location and the values that we share with the city of Somerville to minimize single occupancy vehicles. We're a short walk to the Red Line, over half a dozen bus routes, 2 Blue Bike stations. So we'll be taking full advantage of the unparalleled public transit options this area offers for our customers and also for our union employees. Sierra Naturals also provides access to alternative transit modes by subsidizing both MBTA passes and Blue Bike subscriptions for all of our employees. Sierra Naturals did engage with design consultants here in Somerville to proactively complete a transportation impact analysis and a transportation access plan. I'll now turn it over to Steve Siragusa at DCI to describe the findings of those plans.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening. My name is Steven Siragusa, and I'm the Transportation Manager at Design Consultants located at 120 Middlesex Avenue here in Somerville. As Michelle mentioned, we prepared a transportation impact study and a transportation access plan for the site. This is in compliance with the City of Somerville submission requirements for adult use dispensaries. We work directly with the Mobility Division for all aspects of these reports, including the scope, the data collection, and the trip generation. Given that the site is not going to be open until after 10 a.m., there will be 0 vehicle trips during the morning peak hours. And due to the appointment-only model that Sierra will utilize during the initial 6 months of operation, it's expected there will be a maximum of 20 vehicle trips during the weekday PM peak hour, which is less than 1% of the current traffic in Davis Square during that time. The Sierra team will also work to have product deliveries and other services outside of the peak hours as to not add additional vehicle traffic. Additionally, as Michelle had alluded to, the transportation demand management measures that the team is committed to is going to encourage both employees and customers to use alternative modes of transportation. These measures include subsidies for MBTA and Blue Bike passes for employees, real-time transit data posted in the store, and information for alternative modes of transportation on their website. Given their robust bicycle and pedestrian facility network in Davis Square and the surrounding area, in combination with these TDM measures, the Mobility Division agrees that these facilities will further reduce auto dependency for both customers and employees. I'll now turn it back over to Sean O'Donovan, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. With that, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, we are here to answer any questions. The only question I had posed earlier, Mr. Chairman, we can deal with that whenever. I just wanted to confirm for my client that the process with regard to appointment only, as the chairman, as I'm sure you're aware, we have a 6-month appointment only requirement by the licensing board. So just for clarity purposes and for my client, our understanding is that when they feel it's the right time to pursue walk-in traffic, they would obviously go to the planning board first, but then the licensing commission, and then we would follow the procedure of working with the Mobility Division of the City of Somerville before we came back to your board to request walk-in business. And I just wanted to, I think that's what it says in the report. I just wanted to confirm that for my client. That was really the only question that we had in the report that was submitted for your board, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Sean. That sounds like the right procedure, but I'm going to defer to staff who are obviously the experts on this. I think you've been before us before when we've dealt with appointment-only facilities, but I just want to make sure that we haven't had my knowledge of facility that's gone from appointment-only to walk-in yet. But I want to make sure that staff agrees that that is the process by which they would do that.
Yes, that is the process by which they would do that. That would give the Mobility Division an opportunity to work with the applicant, and in addition to the applicant collecting any data during the startup period, which I believe the Mobility Division recommends in their memo, the Mobility Division could address any concerns or transportation impacts that have come up during that operating period, or may come up by converting to appointment only, or sorry, may come up by converting to walk-ins. It's been a long week.
It really has been. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for the applicant or staff right now before I open up public testimony? No? Okay, seeing none, what I'd like to do is I want to thank the applicant for their presentation. I would like to open it up to public testimony for anybody that wants to speak in support of this application. I do want to note that in case the applicant doesn't know, the board has received a number of emails and written testimony already this project, and it would be my expectation that following testimony and comments and questions, that we would leave the written comment open for a short period of time after to make sure that now that people for the presentation would have the opportunity to provide written testimony following the application too. So what I'd like to do is invite anybody that's in attendance to exercise their raised hand in support of the application. I don't see all that many folks on, so I'm not going to have a 2-minute timer put up, but I would ask that you respect if there are a number of people here that might want to speak, and that there is another application after you as well. So if you want to speak in support of the application, please click the raised hand button, and I'll call on you in the order in which I see you. And right now I only see one person, Alexander Stepro, who looks like she
Hello.
testimony. So I'd like to welcome you to us, and please give your name and address for the record, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so my name is Alexandra Stepro. I live at 5 School Street, Somerville. I work for Sierra Somerville. I'm a inventory team lead here. I'm also our union steward. And I really just wanted to stress, especially like as our union steward, that Sierra actually invited the union in and gave the staff members the opportunity to vote on a collective bargaining agreement, which has honestly given us nothing but benefits. And we've had no issues here at Somerville, like as our steward. I honestly have had the opportunity to do nothing but support everybody, which has been really wonderful, especially through COVID, working at Somerville, as well as I worked for our Needham location. We really honestly set the standard for other dispensaries as far as safety. And a lot of our patients who would come in would honestly tell us that we were the only dispensary that they really felt safe at. So I just wanted to stress how much I support this and how much I honestly love working for Somerville.
Great. Thank you very much, Alexandra. Is there anybody else that wants to testify in support of the application? Please click the raised hand button. And I'll take a scroll through once or twice to make sure I don't miss anyone.
Gabriel Camacho keeps raising and lowering his hand, but has messaged in the chat that he would like to speak.
Oh, okay. Could we please unmute Mr. Camacho and invite him to testify?
Mr. Camacho, you are unmuted. You may need to unmute yourself.
This is Gabriel Camacho, the political director of United Food and Commercial Workers. One of the major reasons why we partnered with Sierra Naturals is because they are committed to equity. They are committed to racial justice. And part of their employment plan is to hire people that have been adversely affected by the so-called war on drugs. In addition, UFCW Local 1445 is the largest union in Somerville. And what we want as Somerville grows and as certain industries go away, we want good union jobs in Somerville. We want good union jobs in which you have great union wages, benefits, and also representation, and have a say at the table when it comes to these most important community boards and et cetera. So obviously we are in support of Sierra Naturals, and it's it would be great for the city of Somerville to have Sierra Naturals again have an establishment.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anybody else that wants to speak in support of the application? Please raise your hand now or do another scroll through the list. Make sure I'm not missing anybody. Going once. Going twice. I will close that portion of the public hearing and I will open it up for testimony to anyone that wants to speak in opposition or otherwise express concern about this application. If you want to do so, please raise your hand and I'll call on you in the order in which I see you. Okay. One more scroll through. Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing and open it up to conversation among the planning board. I have some thoughts and questions, but I'd like to hear what my colleagues think as well. So does anybody want to have any questions or comments for the applicant or of this application? Yes, Amelia.
Mr. Chair, I have a question that relates to both this and the following application, and I'm not sure what the appropriate time is to raise it.
It's now.
There was a note in records from one of the public meetings that this and the other applicants that will be before us later this evening sort of were catering even the adult use portion of the dispensaries to different clienteles. And to the extent that the applicant has sort of a clientele that they feel they are specifically catering to with this expanded use permit, I would appreciate that clarification for comparison to later conversation, I guess.
Thank you, Amelia. I think I have an idea of what you have asked. I don't know if the applicant has a.
I'm sorry.
Has a response to Amelia's question.
Could I ask that? I'm sorry. Could I ask Member Abramoff to answer, say that again, please?
There was a note in one of the records from a public meeting that I think the comment may have been from staff, so please don't feel that you need to defend this, but there was a sentiment that this application and the Harvest Club application, that the dispensaries would be catering to different clientele. And to the extent there is a clientele that you particularly have in mind that you think is just if you have any clarification or comments on that sentiment, I would appreciate it. It's fine if you don't also.
We will serve all clienteles. I really don't, the clientele to us would be the clientele. We are never going to leave out, and we have been a medical dispensary serving patients since 2017, and we are committed to that. That will never leave Sierra's business plan, nor our promise to the city of Somerville, both through the HCA that we signed in 2016, nor when we opened for adult use. So we're going to have that component always. And, anybody who can legally buy cannabis is more than welcome in our store at all times, in our dispensary at all times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The expense that was part of documentation produced by staff, if staff has any response to that question too, because I'm not, I understand what Amelia is asking, but staff might know what she needs.
So if I may, I believe this is, and Amelia, please correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you are referring to on the neighborhood meeting minutes for 255 Elm Street, there was a comment of asked whether 2 dispensaries within a block of each other is excessive. Applicant team said the industry is large enough to allow for differentiation, and the customer focus of the two dispensaries is different. Is that the statement from staff you're referring to? So that was a comment brought up by a member of the public. I cannot remember who, but someone at the January 7th joint neighborhood meeting between Sierra Naturals and the Harvest Club.
Please tell me that's a pun.
Now that I hear it, it could be a pun. It was unintentional. But it was at the neighborhood meeting where both teams were having their neighborhood meeting on the same night with Councillor Davis. That was a comment kind of directed, I guess, to the Harvest Club, although it is applicable to both since it is 2 dispensaries within a block of each other. I think it was the question, if I may speculate, the question was really, is it excessive to have 2 dispensaries so close to each other when both dispensaries are serving adult use customers?
Absolutely. If there was nothing further meant by the comment that they had different customer focuses, that is well and good. I was just looking to understand if there was something that had been left out of the presentation. Thank you.
There was nothing additional meant.
Does anybody else have any comments or? Yeah, John, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is more of a point of clarification for the applicant. So I understand that there's a medical marijuana business that's pre-existing at the location. And I'm just trying to better understand what the transition would look like for the current medical marijuana customer base, assuming that the special permit is granted and recreational marijuana sales commence. So I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to understand a little bit better around some of the requirements that have been placed upon the recreational marijuana consumers. Will they also apply for the medical marijuana customers? And how do you just foresee the transition? I just would love to hear about that.
Certainly, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask our Director of Retail, Michelle Foley, to answer that question, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Sean. Yeah, and thank you for that question. I think that, you know, as far as our current medical patients and the transition, which you may remember in the floor plan, we will have separate lines for medical patients. And so it's really important to us, again, we've been operating medical for almost 4 years now, that we make this as easy as possible for, I mean, not only our medical patients, but our staff and for our adult use customers. So there will be a separate line, separate registers for medical and for adult use. We'll also have private consultation areas as well for our medical patients if they do want to step off a floor and have a consultation with one of our staff members, that we have a private area to do so. And then also ensuring that we have a certain amount of products and categories and SKUs for our medical patients, so that they can always have access to the medicine that they're used to getting. So we will have 2 separate sets of inventory, one for adult use and one for medical.
Thank you. And I do have a follow-up question, if I may, Mr. Chair. With respect to the medical marijuana customers, the existing customer base, are they subject to any of the regulations around the marijuana diversion program and some of the other items that were mentioned in the slides, or will they soon become subject to the same regulations of the recreational marijuana customers?
Yeah, so they are currently subject to all of those regulations. So all of our current medical patients do sign a form when they first become a patient at Sierra Naturals, understanding diversion and the uses of the products and all of that. So all of what I mentioned in the presentation is all applicable in the current Cannabis Control Commission regulations for the medical side. So all of that will still apply, and I'm sorry, currently does apply to the medical side, and will continue.
Sure, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, John. Does anybody have any comments or questions for the applicant at this time? I do want to, we won't be voting on this evening. I am going to be leaving the written record open for a period of time. But I want to thank the applicant for your presentation. I thought it was very, very well done. Your testimony that was submitted in writing in advance of this meeting was largely in support of this application. I, for one, really value some of the community benefit and engagement that you've had and that you said that you will continue to do. I think that speaks really highly to your engagement in the community and as good business neighbors. Like I was saying about the application in Union Square, while we don't and can't vote on an application based on the applicant, it's certainly something that if we were inclined to vote for the application, the fact that you're also good community partners is something that always makes me feel better as well. I hate voting for a good project with somebody that that isn't a good community neighbor or vice versa. So I want to thank you for your application and thank you for your presentation and the folks that spoke in support of what you do for our community. So thank you. I'm going to leave the written record open until, what's the Friday before our next meeting, 23rd? June 23rd. And we hope to take you up again on the meeting that will probably go on till 3 in the morning on the 29th. Bring your cup. So, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would now like to open up the meeting to the next applicant, who is 255. Right, do I have that number right? 255 Elm Street. So if I could please have the applicant and or their counsel unmuted to make a presentation for the board and public, please.
I will go through and unmute everyone. Alexander Kuhn, you are unmuted. Chris Vinning, you are unmuted. Ann Vigorito, you are unmuted. Steven Saragosa, I think you're also on this applicant team. If I'm missing anyone, please let me know. You may need to unmute yourselves, however.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Dan Quayle should be on there. He can be unmuted.
Dan Quayle is also unmuted.
And Andrew Matsis, please.
Andrew Mattis is unmuted.
Excellent, excellent. And I do have a slide deck if I can present.
Yes, give me 1 minute and I will make you the presenter. Okay, Chris, you should be able to share your screen.
Screen 2. Does everybody see the presentation? Does everybody see the presentation now?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So we're the Harvest Club here for our special permit presentation. A little bit about us. We are a social equity company with a main focus and a mission on community and arts embracement here in the city of Somerville. As was stated during the presentation for Sierra, we also will look to support local social programs and have a hiring preference for Somerville residents and minorities, as well as individuals from areas of disproportionate impact. Oh, 1 second. Anne, did you need to say something?
That's okay. You know what, Chris, you've already started, so why don't you do your presentation and then we'll backtrack.
Yeah, very sorry about that. So in addition to being a member of the Social Equity Program, we have also licensed a Tier 5 cultivation in Littleton, Mass. So we will have a direct access to product to ensure that we have fully stocked shelves for our clientele in Somerville. Sorry, just got to get back on this page. The Harvest Club management is myself and Alex Kuhn, both Somerville residents. Alex has a background in real estate and real estate technology companies. He's got a great operational background, and my background is in medical technology. And we both have over 2 years experience in the cannabis industry with a team of individuals behind us, including some Somerville residents who are going to support the operations of the dispensary. Just to reiterate, we're going for an adult use marijuana retailer license, so an establishment that can sell marijuana and marijuana infused products. We will only be selling to individuals over the age of 21. And the types of products that we will sell is anything that has been approved by the CCC, including flower, pre-rolled joints, rosins, vaporizers, edibles, and marijuana infused products, and some limited cannabis accessories. And something also that's extraordinarily important to us is the community impact in creating zero nuisance in our host community. We believe that the use at 255 Elm will be reminiscent of past retail businesses that have occupied the space. The most recent of which was Thrive Thrift Store. If you could imagine the type of traffic flow that you would see at Goodwill, we would anticipate the same levels. Obviously, no marijuana or marijuana infused products will be visible from the street facing windows or into the facility. We have a plan that Alex is going to speak about to really engage the community through our street facing windows. No odor will emanate from the facility. Everything will be prepackaged. Absolutely no consumption on the premises. We will be participating with the community tax and impact fees, and we will have the preferential hiring for Somerville residents, as well as individuals from areas of disproportionate impact. And along with Sierra and other cannabis retailers in Somerville, we intend to join some form of association. We have had early stage conversations with Steve Mackey, and after we obtain our special permit, we intend to formalize some vehicle to unite the operators in Somerville and do the most community benefit possible. Something that always has to be paramount to our operations and will be always thought of during our standard operating procedures is the prevention of diversion to minors. Obviously, we are only going to allow access to individuals 21 or older, and that goes throughout our entirety of our business plan. Inventory control procedures will be in place through the CCC. They have very sophisticated software to make sure that there's no loss of product. Anything that needs to leave the site has to be transported and destroyed. We will work with all stakeholders, including the local police and fire, to make sure our facility is safe and there's no diversion happening in the area near our dispensary. Obviously, as well, our marketing, and I think to speak into the question that the individual had earlier, is that our product is a very adult product and we intend to market it towards adults. We won't have any sort of packaging that is reminiscent of something that you would have in childhood. We want to cater to the adult population of Somerville, and we think that we'll have a wide and diverse client base, and we look forward to serving them. Tamper-proof and child-resistant packaging always, and the two icons that you can see there will be prominently displayed on all of our packaging, as is required by both our ethics as a business and state requirement. And We will continue to update and amend our diversion practices as the state regulations change. We want to always be at the forefront of making sure that this adult product is only consumed by individuals who are legally allowed to purchase and consume it. And another very important component, especially due to our placement on Elm Street and Davis Square, is a commitment to social equity and sustainability. As mentioned, I'm a member of the state's social equity program. This will aid in opening the store as quickly as possible, as we will have a expedited review through our CCC licensing. But we've really embraced the social equity concept, and we've taken that throughout the entirety of our organization. We have committed to following the same hiring practices that are required of economic empowerment entities, and we intend to meet or exceed those thresholds that that the state has put out for those organizations, and that's a commitment to over 50% either Somerville residency employees or individuals from areas of disproportionate impact. In addition to that, we want to make sure that we're looking at sustainability and green initiatives, and that will be taken throughout our construction and our the materials that we're using. We'll do our best to use the most eco-friendly materials, as well as our packaging. We will always seek to promote and use recyclable and wherever possible support programs. I'm not sure that it could be through a discount, but maybe some enhancement to encourage our client base to join us in becoming leaders in sustainability. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Alex, who's going to speak about the proposed site and some of the key features.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you to the board. Thank you for everybody for coming out tonight and having such great patience as always. This is a shot of the front of 255 Elm Street in Somerville. It is again where Thrive used to be. Please make note of a couple of things. One, the nice large windows that we have in front, as well as the phone booth gallery that is already found outside of our door. Next slide, please.
Yes.
This is just a look at our security plan that we've drawn up for our plans. You can see that we have over 30 cameras already in place in this security plan. We'll add more as the CCC will recommend or mandate for us to have in here, but complete coverage of everywhere, including the outside of the building. And you can also see here from our nice sort of large area, we have 4,800 square feet of space to work from here. It's quite large, and it gives us ample space for line mitigation as well as just correct flow. There will not be any bunching up of people, and also plenty of space for our employees, including a very large vault. We're going to make sure we have more than enough space in there. Next slide, please. As mandated by the CCC and as any responsible business we do, we will have 24/7 video monitoring that will be both cloud and locally housed for all of that information as required. We'll have redundant intrusion alarm systems, meaning motion detectors everywhere, so you won't be able to move without setting something off. We will provide all these security plans and monitoring capabilities to the Somerville Police should they want them. Again, we'll have a very large hardened vault with panic alarms to protect all of our product and assets. Every entrance will be electronic carded and keyed throughout the facility. And we do have a security man trap at the entrance where you have to come in and show your ID before anybody can enter because you must be 21. Next slide, please. Again, you can see we have 4,800 square feet. It's quite a large area. We're very lucky. What this has allowed us to do is do a couple different things. One is create a community room for our residents as well as for our own use. We're going to have local arts featured inside and out. I've been a part of the arts community in Somerville for a long time, and we're using this as a vehicle to promote as much local arts as well as music, nightlife, all the great things that make Somerville kind of an exceptional place. It is designed for very easy online ordering. We're going to have two-step sales process so that we can have people that just come directly into the store and go right for their online ordering. All of this is about line mitigation, line traffic control, so that we never have any need to have anybody standing anywhere, including our community room, which we can use for that. We'll be able to do a lot with social distancing because of all of this space. And again, we'll always have very rigorous security. Next slide, please. Again, this is a little bit more about our floor space. You can just see that we have the vestibule in the front that's very large. You have the sales floor waiting area inside, which in this case has furniture in it. To begin with, it'll probably be all open. And then plenty of floor space where you have your POS, where you would make your purchase and talk to one of your bud tenders on the right. And then number 2 would be where you would go and retrieve your product. So we think this makes for a quicker, cleaner process, and again, allows us to move people quicker. And that area with the blue chairs is our community room, which we can use. I'll show you in a slide a little bit more about it, but again, can be used for mine mitigation. So our community room, again, consists of about over 500 square feet of space that's designated for anybody in the community who would like to use it. We're going to have an online sign-up sheet. If local arts orgs, people have already approached us about thinking about doing screenings for movies in there. Anybody over 21 who is a resident of Somerville can get on our sign-up sheet and ask to use the room. And as long as it's something that we think is compliant with our business, we will allow that. But it's just a nice extra space that we have. And again, we'll do a lot of trainings as well as record expungements, job fairs, and things like that. This is our arts embrace. So again, arts is very important to us. It'll be a central part of our entire dispensary. We're going to have those window boxes on the front, which was talked about, as places to display local arts, as well as all throughout the store. These will be rotating displays. We'll rotate them probably every about 3 months for the front windows and interior, depending on the artists. Here's a little bit better of an idea about what that'll look like. Please excuse my poor graphical nature. I've tried to put a couple in there to give you an idea. I would hope it'd look as nice as the Louis Vuitton store one I put on the left. But the fact of the matter is we have an enormous creative community here in Somerville. I think our Open Studios is one of the largest in the state. We just have an incredibly diverse and really talented community, and we're going to be giving them the opportunity to showcase their work or art in these spaces. We're going to try to ask for a lot of creativity. We will have budgets. These will be things that we will do with curation. So we will have a local arts liaison who will help us plan and oversee all of this. There will never, ever be any cannabis content, nor anything that we would consider overtly offensive to any group or persons. These will be kept very much around the person's creativity. And again, there will be art throughout the interior, but this is specifically what to do with our space on the outside. You know, you cannot have direct view. So we thought this was a really great way to treat that. We're also big on sustainability. So we've talked about putting a bike rack inside of the front vestibule there. We're going to supply Charlie cards and MBTA subsidies to all of our employees. We'll also provide them with the Blue Bike program. There's a Blue Bike in better times. There was a Blue Bike stop right, a couple feet away from our door. And we're also going to have bike parking within our section of the dispensary for our employees. So we're really going to try to push the bike thing. We're also going to have one of those really cool MBTA schedule things that tells you exactly how long till the next train comes and where everything else is. Those are really neat. And that'll actually be on that wall behind those bicycles, where we'll also feature a large events and live music posting board, so people can come up and put up all their local events. We've talked about Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., Sunday, 11 to 5 p.m. We'll be doing all of our deliveries of any cash or things in the very early morning, so we'll not be getting in the way of any traffic. We are talking about appointment only for 6 months, as everybody else is. As you can see, again, we're going to be hiring 50% Somerville residents or social equity people from ADIs into our dispensary. We'll be paying an $18 starting wage, and there will be diversity and inclusion in all hiring. We fully expect and intend this place to really reflect the city that Somerville is. And again, with this special permit, we're hoping to maybe open by October of 2021. And that's about it for now. I think the final slide is just a thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Board. Attorney Ann Vigorito for the applicant, the Harvest Club. As stated, they'll be located at 255 Elm Street, and it's the former Thrive location. I apologize. I would have begun to introduce the team, but Chris and Alex are very excited. We've been working together for 2 years. They probably know most of this stuff in their sleep, and I feel like they could probably do it in their sleep. But just to give you an introduction, Christopher Vining and Alexander Kuhn, they're the principals and managing members of the Harvest Club LLC. But the other members of the team are Daniel Quayle. He's the lead architect from Lincoln Architects. He's designed many commercial properties throughout the Commonwealth. Paul Ravuto, who's the manager of Wayne Alarm, he provides the security installation. He handles security at various Somerville businesses, including several of the banking institutions here in Somerville as well. Andrew Mastis is also here this evening. He's the president of MC Andrews Construction. He won't have a presentation, but he is here if there are any questions regarding construction. And of course, we have Steve Saragusa from Design Consultants. He performed the traffic study. And just to digress a little bit, prior to coming before you, there was a neighborhood meeting on January 7th of 2021. And I believe there was a discussion about that joint neighborhood meeting with the previous applicant, as it was a joint neighborhood meeting. I believe we went second, but there were some questions and there were some sufficient answers, I thought, provided. I mean, overall, it was a very positive meeting. And if there are any questions regarding that, we can get more in depth during the question and answer portion. The Harvest Club did receive licensing approval in late January of 2021. And the hours, I believe Alex went over those: Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then Sunday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. At this time, I would like to hand it over. I don't know if you'd like to hear from the architect or from security. I think maybe it's best to hand it over to Paul Baruta to talk a little bit about the security, and then to Steve Saragusa to talk about traffic.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Did we not mute Paul Varuto? Paul Varuto, we forgot to unmute him. I apologize.
Paul, if you speak, we can hear you. Or we at least should be able to.
Maybe we come back to him at the end, after traffic.
Yeah, quickly, Paul, sometimes computer audio has problems. If you go under the audio tab of your control panel, there will be a phone number that you can also use to call in on. That can sometimes you
also need to unmute yourself after they unmute you.
Paul, I would recommend trying the phone call option. And if Stephen Saragusa, if you would like to jump in, you are unmuted on our end, but we'll need to unmute yourself.
Sure, thank you. So good evening again. My name is Steve Saragusa. I'm the transportation manager at Design Consultants, located at 120 Middlesex Avenue in Somerville. So similarly, we prepared a transportation impact study and a transportation access plan for this site, which again is in compliance with the City of Somerville submission requirements for proposed adult use dispensaries. Again, for this site, we work directly with the mobility division for all the aspects, including the scope, the data collection, the trip generation, all of which were approved prior to the submission of the reports. So Alex did a really good job of going over a lot of the sustainability actions and items that the applicant will be utilizing. And again, since the site's not going to be open until 10 a.m., there's going to be 0 vehicle trips during that morning peak hour. And due to the appointment only model that they were utilized for the initial 6 months of operation, they're expecting approximately 28 vehicle trips during the weekday PM peak hour, which again is less than 1% of the current traffic that is currently going through Davis Square during that time. They're also going to work to have those product deliveries and other services outside of those peak hours as to not add additional vehicle trips. The TDM measures, as Alex alluded to very well, they're going to encourage both employees and customers to use those alternative modes of transportation. And again, those include the subsidies for MBTA and Blue Bike passes for employees, on-site bicycle parking for employees and for customers, and information about all those alternative modes on their website. And again, the Mobility Division agreed that all the facilities that are in Davis Square, both existing and proposed, they're going to further reduce auto dependency for customers and employees. So again, more than welcome, more than happy to answer any questions that you guys might have. Thanks.
I'm not sure, this is Attorney Vigorito again. I'm not sure if we've been able to get Paul Veruto successfully unmuted at this time.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I think, yeah.
Yeah, very strange. It said it was unmuted on my end, but apparently not. So if everybody can hear me, again, I am Paul Veruto of Wayne Alarm Systems. We are a locally owned and operated full-service security company. Our headquarters is in Lynn, Massachusetts, where we also have our own UL-listed FM-approved central station where we monitor over 25,000 accounts in the New England area. I myself have been in the security industry for 32 years, and it's been a pleasure working with the Harvest Club. We have a three-tiered approach to security and diversion prevention. Includes a burglar alarm system, as we went over earlier, a surveillance system, and a credential-based door access system, which not only prevents access to certain doors at certain times, but also logs access. So creates a high level of accountability. So overall, I think they covered everything in the main presentation, but if anybody has any questions as it relates to security, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you once again. This is Ann Vigorito. At this time, this concludes our presentation. I don't know if you would want to open it up to the public at this time, or if the board had any questions.
And before we open it up, you had mentioned the combined hearing that you and the previous, I believe it was previous applicant, had at some point in the recent past. Could you give a brief overview of, you said there was some concerns raised, because I certainly have them too, about the cluster of the same use in the same block. And I'm just where that came out, if staff has any input on where the neighborhood meeting went on that, and where staff's position is as well. I'd be curious to know. The first thing that jumped out to me is
Chairman Capuano, that was there was a neighborhood meeting on January 7th of 2021, and the Sierra Naturals were first. They went from 6 o'clock to about maybe 7:25, and then we went over to the Harvest Club. And the recollection was there was a question about having two dispensaries, you know, within the same block of existence. And Chris Vining, who is one of the managing members here, had answered that question, stating that the industry is large enough to allow differentiation in the customer focus of the two dispensaries, and that there's enough of the in the sales that both you know, would be fine. I guess like the comparison would be having, you know, two liquor stores maybe in the same locations. You know, we see it all the time. You know, you go into shopping centers, Target sells alcohol now, and then there's an actual liquor store in that plaza as well. Or, you know, even in Davis Square, where these folks are all located, there are.
And you know Davis Square just as well as I do. Where's the other liquor store in Davis Square?
Well, I mean, I'm only thinking of one.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and just to remind myself, because I don't mean to jump on you quite yet. That'll come. Didn't we permit a cannabis store where K and Chips was too?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, could you repeat that?
I recall that there was, I don't remember if it was medical or retail, but I'm But I have a very clear recollection that this board permitted a cannabis use at the old Dolly's Can Chips on Highland Avenue.
Oh,
And
North,
they were in
Northeast.
operation yet.
Yes, Northeast Select. That was Attorney DiGirolamo from my office, I believe, came before you in June of 2020. It was around then.
Yeah, are they in business? Are they? I haven't been to.
They have not opened yet. I did have a conversation with him about where they were. I think they're signing leases or getting construction things, but I don't think they have a tremendous build out.
Okay, so my concern is then, and that it's not too, and as I know you've been before us and me when we've had, adult use stores, and I've always been in support, and I very much appreciate the presentation that was made by your client tonight, as well as the other one that came before us a few minutes ago. My concern is less about the application and more about the use cluster in Davis Square, right? So we're not talking about two marijuana facilities, retail uses in one block. We're really talking about 3 stores in Davis Square. And I'm going to take a little bit of an issue with your characterization of you always, you regularly see 2 liquor stores right next door to each other, and you don't. I'm thinking of the closest 2 that I can think of might be in Ball Square, where you've got Crowley's Liquors and you've got Ball Square Fine Wines. Those are the 2 closest liquor stores I can think of in the city. There might be some that are close to each other on Lower Broadway, but other than that, you look at Davis Square, there's 1 liquor store. You look at Teal Square, you've got 1. Then you've got the beer store next to Johnny's on Route 16, and then Save More on Route 16. Then you go down to Union Square. I think there's only 1 place in the Union Square area that sells, liquor in a packy type place, maybe 2. I can't think of any place in the city where you have 3 different liquor stores in the same couple of blocks, and that's how I liken this. I'm saying this now just because you went second. If the Sierra Naturals came second, I would be asking them these questions. Less a question to you and more a question to the board. Is how do we want to manage these cluster of uses in a few square blocks? Is that something that's appropriate and something that we want to do, regardless of what the use is? It has less to do for me about being a cannabis use store and more about, do we need 3 of the same thing in Davis Square? 3 of the same retail type space in Davis Square, and I can't think of any other place in the city where you have more than 2 liquor stores that are in a geographic location, let alone 3. So those are the concerns that I have, not for your application specifically, and not for Sierra, specifically either. I think both of you had great presentations. I think both of you will be, excellent additions, expansions of use in the city. My concern is the cluster of uses that all seem to be centered around Davis Square, and I can't think of any other place in the city where we have planned for a use cluster like this, regardless of whether there are enough people to use. I'm sure you'll have plenty of business with 3 locations. The question is that the most appropriate use of retail space in Davis Square to have 3 of the same thing? Because there aren't 2 liquor stores in Davis Square. There aren't 2 liquor stores in Teal Square. There aren't 2 in Ball Square. There are 2 in Lagoon Square that aren't close to each other at all. And I would say that K2 really isn't really Lagoon Square. This is kind of going against how Somerville has rezoned itself and utilized kind of the cluster of use incentives. And so I don't mean to be going at you, and I'm not going at you at all. My concern more is on the cluster of uses generally that is inconsistent with what we've done with other adult retail stores like liquor stores. And that's my concern. Again, not for your application. I just happen to be talking after your presentation. But I was going to raise this regardless. And so I'd like some consideration on that by staff and by members of the board.
Chairman,
I'd like to take public testimony, but I'd like to hear some feedback, whether it's this evening or in a subsequent meeting by staff and by members of the board on this, because I think it's something that we should focus on as a land use policy. So I don't know
Mr. Chair.
address it now, but I know that there are folks that probably want to testify.
Mr. Chair, if you would like, for the record, I'm happy to provide some background, and I also have a map available of that visually shows where cannabis stores may potentially be located now or in the future, if the board would like to see that at any time.
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, I think they can be licensed in many places. I think that was the intent behind zoning. The question isn't where can they be, the question is where should the same use clusters be?
To clarify what I just said, so cannabis stores can be permitted anywhere in the commercial districts in the city, but the first stage of the process is to apply for and receive a host community agreement from the mayor. So I have a map available of locations that have received a host community agreement from the mayor, and so are truly possibilities rather than just obscure possibilities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, if you can, yeah. Certainly
If I
goes
could
towards addressing the
respond, can everybody hear me?
Yes,
okay, great.
I do before you start though, I do want to say this might not be the best time to respond, because I do want to open it up to testimony, and we will have a question and answer period kind of after this as well.
Okay.
But if it's a brief answer, I would appreciate it. But I'm looking at this as a land use policy question and less so on your specific application.
Yeah. No, and to speak to the land use policy, I think that when Charlotte was referencing the map, there are a limited number of areas in Somerville where this is permitted to have applied back in 2019. And we identified the site in Davis Square and the size of the location to create the least nuisance possible for line mitigation, to ensure that there will not be any queuing on the sidewalks because the space is too small, and that the site was identified to do the best community benefit possible to Somerville and the greater Davis Square community. We really, Alex and myself have been engaged with this community for 2 years, and it's really something that's very important to us, and that's we've engaged with local groups along the way, and I think that we want to use the site as a way to really keep Davis Square and embrace those arts communities, so that we're not kind of putting cookie cutter type of establishments up, because it's difficult for local retailers to occupy this type of real estate, and traditional retail is becoming a very difficult proposition at some of the commercial property rates, so that it's important to realize that this that it's in a great location, because it's going to be a great thing for Somerville, and that's why we have the community room and our arts embrace. We're really looking forward to getting to move forward so that we can formally engage with both the other Somerville retailers and through our own efforts to really be a value add to the community. So I understand the concern. I believe that we identified the location within an approved area to ensure that those issues do not come to fruition. We have the line, we have the appointment only review period to ensure that we're a high standard operator. And we understand that we only get to operate this facility as a privilege, especially in the location in the community that has embraced us. So that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate your response to that. And if Charlotte has a map that she can bring up, I know she had said that she would like to. I'd like to see.
Yes, can everyone see the map? Okay, so what this map is showing is the most recent recommendation that has been issued is the round 3 recommendation. So this map was created as part of that recommendation, and it shows in black, these sites look larger than they actually are just for ease of visualizing. In black, it shows locations that have received a host community agreement. It does not differentiate between locations already in operation and locations that are new. I can go over that if you would wish, but black is received a host community agreement. Red is applicants that were recommended for a host community agreement as part of round 3, and I believe are in the process of signing their host community agreements. And then gray is applicants that were not recommended for host community agreements. Red was the wait list for round 4. So this is the map. There is a more significant gathering of cannabis dispensaries in Davis Square compared to the rest of the city. If the board would like now or later for me to go over which cannabis dispensaries have received their special permits versus are still in the process or have not yet come before the board, I'm happy to do that.
Charlotte, I think I appreciate this. I think that's a conversation I'd like to have a little bit later. I appreciate what you've shown us, but I know there are folks here that want to provide testimony. It is getting late, and maybe we can hold this discussion until after testimony, or maybe in a future meeting.
Of course.
Yeah. So thank you very much. I would now, if are there any other questions from members of the board before we open it up to testimony? Okay. Thank you. At this time, I would like to open up the hearing for public testimony for people that want to speak in support of this application. Now, I want to be clear, it's testimony for this application. The other application down the street, that is closed. And so this is for this current application. So I'm going to scroll, and please exercise your raised hand. I'll call on you when I see you. I see Robert and Micah Gorn, so if I could please have them unmuted.
Robert, Micah, you are unmuted.
Good evening. Thank you for taking our response. We appreciate the board and what they've done.
My name is Robert Gorn. I've been in the square, my family, for over 75 years. I've been in Somerville over 100 years because we were in Union Square. I've managed this building for over 35 years. I've seen it, Somerville, grow, and I've seen it prosper. Count the number of restaurants that are in David Square. Count anything you want, because competition is the best thing you can get for keeping a square active. There are many squares, none of them as good as Davis Square in Somerville. And why is that way? Because there's competition. 35 years ago, I had a Burger King to come into this building. The city didn't want a Burger King, and the answer was They didn't want any more restaurants in Davis Square. Well, you all know what's happened over the last 40 years in Davis Square with restaurants. Some have prospered, the best ones prosper, and the ones that aren't the best don't prosper. Competition is the best thing. Competition has kept this country alive. That's what you need. Otherwise, people become complacent. It doesn't matter what the business is. If you don't have competition, you have complacency. I agree that there are a number of cannabis stores in the area. All of them can thrive and prosper. All of them can contribute to the city of Somerville. They all will contribute to it. That's what should happen. They should be allowed to exist and to let the best one win. And if they can't survive, they will fail. But that's what we shouldn't be telling people they can't open. That's a mistake. You want the competition. The people who run those stores, if they're smart, want the competition too. And thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it.
If I may, please state your address for the record before you depart.
My address is 255 Elm Street, Somerville, Mass.
Thank you very much.
That's where I work. I'm there every.
Thank you very much, sir. Does anybody else in support of this application, please raise your hand now and I will call on you in the order in which I see. Going once. Going twice. Seeing none, I will close that portion of the public hearing and I will open it up to anybody that wants to speak in opposition to the application or otherwise express concern about it. If you'd like to do so, please raise your hand. I will call on you. Once. Twice. Seeing none, I will close that portion of the public hearing and I will open it up to discussion by members of the planning board. Just so you all know, I intend to keep written testimony open for this application as well. What I would like to hear from the board and from staff their thoughts on use clusters. I understand that there is, and I'm being told that there is a member of licensing commission here who might be able to give some insight on to the questions that I had about the cluster of uses. So I don't know if Joe Lynch wants to speak, but if you do, Joe, I would welcome the opportunity to hear from you.
Joe, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Chair Capuano, members of the board. I'm Joe Lynch, Chairman of the Somerville Licensing Commission. I'm not here to speak against or for the applicant that's in front of you, but merely to provide some information about the clustering issue that Chair Capuano raised. The Licensing Commission worked very hand in hand with the Somerville City Council during the crafting of the legislation for the zoning through the Land Use Committee when it came to recreational cannabis shops. The City Council and their committees grappled with the issue of clustering of these types of establishments in the city. The City Council and the legislative uses and the land uses, it was thought by the council at the time they were crafting the legislation, because of the size of the city of Somerville and the restrictions that we may be putting on the location of these organizations, that it really did not make sense to put in a clustering clause within the legislation. We've grappled with that, Chair Capuano, on the Licensing Commission side as well. It was brought up to us in a very limited way when we had our hearings on the licensing. And you are correct. Within the Davis Square district, we have now given provisional licensing approval to 3 recreational cannabis shops, Highland Ave and 2 on Elm Street. In response, I would just tell you that guidance that we have received from the CCC and the Cannabis Control Commission, our licensing commission is to treat these applications the same way we would any with a controlled substance or a highly regulated substance. So for instance, Chair Capuano, we cannot prohibit restaurants going into Davis Square asking for full liquor licenses. We just cannot do that. So as you know, Davis Square has multiple full liquor licenses, as well as beer and wine establishments within food shops. We anticipate more of those to come. We cannot control where package stores go. There is legislation, however, that gives us guidance as to the distance from schools, from certain daycare centers, where children congregate in parks. Those 3 establishments that we're talking about all meet the criteria for the distance from those pre-established. So the issue of clustering, Chair Capuano, comes up time to time. Davis Square, the community input that we received on all 3 of those applications, there were not any significant, in our mind, before we gave provisional approval, there were no significant voices of opposition. So I just add that for your information about the clustering issue. Thank you very much, Chair. Sure.
I very much appreciate that insight, because it's not something that I was necessarily opposed to. It's a question that I had and a concern that I had on not whether we can not prohibit, but but consider limiting the cluster of uses, but whether it's smart land policy. But I do very much appreciate your comments and your insight on that. I would love to hear from members of the board and from staff on that issue, as well as any other issue that you have. Any questions? Yes, Amelia.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if this is a question perhaps for Mr. Lynch or perhaps for staff, but my understanding of package store licenses is that there is sort of a number that the municipality is capped at based on population. I know that in the original Somerville ordinance licensing adult use marijuana dispensaries, there was a temporary cap of, I believe, 12, that there would be no more than 12 host community agreements or licenses granted for the first some period of time. And I'm wondering if anyone knows whether that cap is still in place, whether it was renewed, or whether there is a new cap in place, or if there is still any kind of, not about the location, but about the overall number restriction.
Chair Capuano, if you'd like me to answer the question. Yeah, Amelia, there is still a cap in place. That was at my request, that the city of Somerville and the city council built into the legislation that there would be no more than 12 issued in a 2-year period. The city council came back to the Somerville Licensing Commission last year due to the pandemic and requested us to extend that period out for another, and I'm going to ask Charlotte Lease if she could correct me on the date. I believe we extended that to 2022, the end of 2022. After we issued the first, I'm sorry, Charlotte, after we issue the first 12, we may have to go back, or the council may come back to us and ask us to cap it again.
This is Charlotte speaking. I can go back and double check, but my recollection is correct. I believe the cap of 12 expired actually in November 2020, and has not been extended, but the priority period during which only Group A and Group B licensees can receive approvals was extended until 2022, I believe. So 4 years from the original passage date rather than 2 years from the original passage date of 2018. So that effectively keeps a limit on the number of licenses, but not at specifically 12. It limits the groups that are eligible for licenses. But at this time, I believe 12 host community agreements have been issued. So were all 12 of those host community agreements to receive their licenses and their special permits, we would still have a maximum of 12, even if there is no legal requirement that we have no more than 12.
Thank you, Charlotte. And one other question to address Amelia. Amelia, you are correct. The city of Somerville is capped at 29 package stores.
Thank you.
Amelia, did you have any other questions or comments before I move on to someone else?
I'm happy to share some additional thoughts, but I think if the rest of the group has questions, we should maybe move on.
Absolutely. Who else? Rob.
Thank you. Great. So for those who were listening earlier to the discussion around the Union Square dispensary, it probably won't come as a surprise that I am pleased to see on this application that some careful attention to kind of how the storefront is arranged with the security guard sort of screened from the exterior views and use of art display. One question I have, as I was watching your presentation tonight and looking at the materials that were, at least that are posted on the Somerville website, is there seems to be a different floor plan, and I just want to make sure that I'm looking at the right one. There looks like there's a change in where the bathrooms were. I mean, it actually looked not de minimis changes. So I, at some point, I guess if maybe not today, but before we vote on this, get clarity to make sure that we've got the right version. Thank you.
We will make sure that you have all the most up-to-date materials. The floor plan had a slight change in the 2 years since we initially applied, and we'll provide all of those materials to make sure that you have the most up-to-date copy of what we intend to put into the space.
Does anybody else have any questions right now? Okay. Amelia, did you want to revisit some comments that you wanted to make?
Just on the topic of clustering, since it sounded like that was something you were prepared for us to spend a little bit more time on, I fundamentally share your concern about the clustering, but I also find it initially, and I gave this a lot of thought before today's meeting, not the purview of the planning board with the existing licensing and regulatory structure that surrounds this particular use to apply our lens on top of those layers. Personally, I think that the package store example is a very appropriate parallel and would hope to see that capped at an appropriate level moving forward. And I certainly have no knowledge of what the workings of the licensing or mayor's advisory committee would be, but so long as there are appropriate measures in place at those other levels, I struggle to think of a land use planning rationale that distinguishes so greatly between these and other acceptable but special permit uses.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to do is, think on this a little bit more. I'd like to, obviously keep some written testimony available to be submitted through Friday at noon, which is the standard protocol. So the 23rd at noon, and we can revisit this on the the meeting that, time we'll never forget coming up in weeks. I want to thank everybody for this discussion because this is one that, obviously stuck out to me and some others too. I appreciate the insight and the responses from staff and from Mr. Lynch and from the applicants from both of these similar applications. So I look forward to meeting with you all again in a few weeks. So if nobody else has any questions or comments that they'd like to make this evening, I would move that the application at 255 Elm Street be continued to the 29th, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. Chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Thank you all very much, and we'll see you in a few weeks. It is my understanding that there is one more piece of additional business on our agenda that we won't be discussing this evening. That's right, Sarah. We're not bringing up the consultants, all right? I don't know if Sarah's still with us.
I am still here. That is correct. Unfortunately, I do not have a scope of work to share with you just yet. So I hope to in the next week or so before our next meeting for you to review.
Okay. If you want to hold this until May 20th, that might be beneficial to our sanity.
I think I can share it with you, but not necessarily discuss it at the next meeting, considering, the 3 a.m. projected end time.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all very much. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add before I go try to find some food? Okay. Chair moves to adjourn, seconded by the clerk. Chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Great. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Can I just say quickly, thank you, Sam. And we definitely miss you.
Yeah, I'm getting out before the marathon meeting.
Oh, you are so. Oh man, I thought we had one more meeting with you, but hey, thank you very, very much for your service to this board. It was great getting to really know you and as I said to you a couple of weeks ago, I think you brought valuable insight and discussion to this board. So I thank you, and we would welcome you back anytime. And good luck in Washington.
Thank you. And I mean, I told this to a lot of you, but as a sucker for everything local government, it's been a pleasure, and it's great seeing people who care so much about the community and working with you all. So thank you, and we will be back before too long.
Sam, if you want, we're all virtually. You can geek out and watch us from DC.
I can watch. I don't know if I can legally participate, but
you can watch.
I'll just have it on in the background.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. Really
Thanks,
appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.